All right, so welcome everybody. We have a room full of junior architecture students here, and I'm here, Mr. Hankin, the architecture teacher here at Dash. And today, the Dash students will be presenting their final project for a pop-up celebrating Morris Lapidus. It's an unexpected event in a unique place, and it's inspired by Deborah Desilets. So for this project, students were asked to create a pop-up design in celebration of Morris Lapidus's work on Lincoln Road. The unique exhibition will curate an experience for a limited period of time. It's set up at a selected location on the Lincoln Road Mall in Miami Beach. The intent, I'm going to take my mask off for the moment. The intent is that the students develop a style learning from the design process and principles Morris Lapidus used in his design of Lincoln Road Mall. Students first studied the pedestrian mall in depth and used basic design principles developed by Lapidus: color, flow, graphics, light, and structure. The goal of each individual project is to get people talking and sharing. Thorough research, study, and design explorations culminated in a thoroughly developed design proposition. So our schedule for today is as follows. We will have about 6.5 minutes for each student, and that time will be broken up as follows. Each student will get approximately 2 minutes to present their work, and then there is approximately 4-minute critique from the jurors. Right now we have 2 jurors here, so that will be easy. If we have the intended total 5 jurors, then I'm just going to ask you to be cautious about the time that we're spending. So we have 22 minutes. It's about 7 minutes each. And so that's approximately 2.5 hours. I'm going to introduce all the jurors at this time so that when they come in, if they indeed do come in, we don't have to interrupt the flow of the jury. We're expecting, and we see Deborah Desilets trying online here to get connected. So Deborah, as all the students know, is, she's a Florida architect and an author of a monograph on Morris Lapidus. And she's worked with the students throughout the project, introducing them to Lapidus and his design theories. We're expecting Daniel Blanco. He's a student at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, RPI. Was a former Dash student in architecture. Daniel Luo, who is a student at the Cooper Union in New York, and also former Dash student. And now I'm going to introduce the 2 whose faces you see here on the screen. Shelby Roach, she is at Washington University's Sam Fox School. And Shelby, you want to just say hello and a few words about yourself?
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I was here yesterday for the sophomores jury, and it's nice looking at everyone's work, so I'm excited to see everything. And yeah, I'm studying architecture at WashU, so I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, Shelby. Welcome back. And Michelle Sangwinson from the University of Miami. Michelle, you want to say hello?
Yeah, hi guys. I did see you guys a couple weeks ago. So I'm very excited to see how this project panned out, and yeah, we should.
Thank you for being here. We really appreciate your time and support. Yeah, I'm just going to remind the students when you come up here, like I've taken off my mask. I feel safe now. Everyone else is pretty much masked. And so you can feel the same, feel comfortable to do that as well. Okay, so I think we'll get started. Our first student is Ivy, and I'm going to share the screen here. There we have it.
In the trunk is fine.
Okay, Deborah, welcome.
Hey, how are you? How are
Hey.
you?
Good, good. Thank you for being here. We're just getting started, so perfect timing. The only thing that I'm just going to reiterate that I said a little earlier, we have 22 students and about 7 minutes for each student. So the students will get a couple of minutes to present their work. And right now we have 3 jurors here, maybe 4. And so we have to keep the jurors' comments within like a 4-minute period total for each student. Okay, so that would be all the jurors collected. All right, and we're going to get started with Ivy. I guess, does anybody have any questions before we get started? No? Okay. All right.
Hello, and this is my pop-up design. So we were supposed to create a pop-up celebrating Morris Lapidus, and it's supposed to be placed in Lincoln Road. And this image right here is my final concept. Some of the design principles that I used in structure for like the final one are edges and nodes. So we were asked to research follies in Lincoln Road, 2 research papers. The first one is just sketching out some follies, just observing them. And the second one is the same, however, identifying some sort of aspects, for example, edges and landmarks and nodes. And the purpose is so that we can later incorporate that into our final design. And for example, I used a lot of edges and nodes in my final design. We were then later asked to create models of follies in Lincoln Road. I chose this one, and then we were also asked to do a close-up of a folly, and I did a close-up on the angles, mainly because of the edges, and I thought that was very interesting. These are my sketches and my study model. So I kind of went with the second idea, the one on the bottom with the triangles, mainly because of edges and nodes. And also I kind of want an open concept, mainly so people can go through it with ease. And however, when I was making the study model, I realized that there were some aspects I didn't take into consideration. So I revised it into the study model that is on the left. And I eventually later revised that one as well. These are my orthographics and the site plan. I wanted to incorporate at least some sort of vegetation into my pop-up because the place where I'm putting this pop-up, there's a lot of vegetation surrounding it. So that's why there's green on the top view, and that represents plants. This is my exploded axonometric, and I had rendered my pop-up in Rhino just to like sort of get a different perspective. And those are the 3 views. This is my final model in 3 different views. And then this is my final board. And that is all.
So you can ask the jurors if they have any comments or questions.
Do you have any comments or questions?
Okay, I'll start. It's a really beautiful project. I really like your drawings. they're very easy to read, and I appreciate like the clarity of them, especially with the renders too. Like they just look very nice, neat. I would try to work on adding more human scale that actually interacts with the like structure, because I wonder like what the bottom ledges like are they like seats, are they little tables, like
Yeah.
how are people interacting with those?
Okay, so I'm going to do this in this view. So over here, this is for seating, therefore people can actually use it. And since it's supposed to be celebrating Lapidus, and we're supposed to include something that can celebrate him and inform people about him, this is supposed to be sort of like a display area. So here are supposed to be like the follies that we had made and models, and that would inform people about Lapidus.
Okay, well, yeah, you can incorporate that. You can Photoshop people interacting with this and maybe even have display just so it's more clear. And I think it'll help your project read a lot better. But yeah, good job overall.
Thank you.
Yeah, your initial like study sketches, are they marker on trace paper? I just want to know, what did you use for those?
I did it with marker first, and then I also incorporated colored pencil, mainly for blending, but when I scan them, it doesn't really come out that well.
Right. But I still think like, I know that like it's having its trouble scanning like right now, but I like your confidence in your drawing. I can see it through your concept sketches and your study sketches. They're very bold, and it's very nice to see that. Just little things on like the orthos, and like don't forget your ground line. Don't forget a scale bar or an indication of the scale. I know that these were drawn at 1/2 or 1/4. Okay, yeah, so just with that, and what was I gonna say? But I do think overall it was, I do like the several iterations that you did. It's a very, very clearly thought out plan. And just as Shelby said, just adding those little things will really elevate it.
Thank you.
I guess I should say something. Is that okay, Eric?
Yeah, please.
Oh, good. Ivy, I think from beginning to end, you can see a continuity here, which is wonderful. I do like seeing the shadow of the people in some of the early drawings. And I do like feeling the figurines of the people in the earlier drawings. I agree with the comments that seeing Photoshopped people into the final presentation would work. But I do think you began with it. And it's nice to see that you began with, because the end product shows that even if you don't have the photograph there. So always remember, where you start is where you're going to end. So where you're beginning and the relationship between the beginning to the end is always very tricky, but where you start is where you end. And you did have people in at the beginning, and I feel the people there, and I do feel it in the solutions that you came up with at the final, and that there is that display case and there is that bench, which I could perceive and other people would perceive better with more people put in. I agree with that. The other thought I had is you're putting this inside of the 1100 block, is that correct, with the Herzog and Demeron building near to it?
Yes.
Is that true? It might have been very interesting to have done a section through the entire thing showing the Herzog and Demeron, because I think you've done really well to blend into that context of their building as well. They saw their building as a vertical Lincoln Road. And what you've sort of done is taken 3 or 4 ideas of Mr. Lapidus and spun them together in a new combination of Lapidus, which was what they did. And so you at a mini scale have done absolutely the same thing. So I think always remember people. And I do think that you did get that shadowy figure of people in it, but always remember people are your client. And it is very important to show relationships in architecture are what we are all about. And showing the context that you placed this in as a section might have really helped to seal that deal with me, that you were definitely playing on 3 different variations of Lapidus, Herzog and Demeron's landscape, the floor plan, and Lapidus, and then yourself. I think that would have come through brilliantly.
Thank you.
Okay. You Ivy, can you click forward for the next?
Here?
Is that correct, Francesca?
Thank you so much.
I suggest everyone to speak loudly, really like you're speaking to the entire classroom.
Hi, my name is Francesca, and this is my presentation on a structure that is temporary, which we had to build for Linden Road. So we had to start off by creating these sketches of the follies that are in Linden Road. The first one on the left is a close-up of each of the follies to notice all of their details and what makes them each unique. And the drawings on the right are, the drawings on the right are the follies from a farther angle. I started off by creating some models of some of the follies, and the one on the left is a piece of one of the other follies, but closer up. Oh, well, this PowerPoint is in PDF form, so not all my drawings are there, so I can't really show them. But the research model that I created, the study model that I created is on the left, and the sketches for it is on the right. And I would show you more of the drawings, but they're not there. So here is my site plan. I'm planning on placing it around the Michigan Avenue and Jefferson Avenue. And to the right are the orthographics. So my final model, also made out of railroad board, has a total height of 15 feet, and from width on each side is 15 feet as well. I would have also created a stop motion animation. I don't know how to explain it. To show, because what's coming out of it is technically a structure that would have water falling into the middle, and the sort of floating platform that it has in the middle is for people to stand on, and where it's open on the edges is where you could see water that has fallen from the top and fall into there, and it would be lit up through all of that. And here is my final board composite. Do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, hi, Francesca.
Hi.
Right?
Yeah.
Just a couple of things. I do think overall as a design, it is very interesting just because it's not the first thing that I would think of when I myself would get this prompted the project. However, I am feeling like, is the middle sketch the one that wasn't seen before?
Yeah, the ones here on the final board composite are actually some of the sketches that didn't appear in the previous slide. So I have
right.
other.
Yes. Right. So yeah, I would like to say I'm having a hard time finding a connection, but those two missing sheets do. So I guess just check back on the PDF to double check. And little things as far as presentation wise, I just noticed on some boards, on some slides, I feel like text was just too big, or and I feel like that's a common thing. We all do it all the time, but really let your sheets breathe and really let us see it to its fullest capacity, especially that we're online. And as far as your initial sketches, the research sketches, I do appreciate that you're using color, and the color is obviously relating to the water and the nature around. Just for clarity, I would have you practice your line weights, just so that they're really beautiful drawings, but I feel like they could be even more enhanced. And I feel like that's that could be taken to all your drawings and your process and your finals as well. But I think overall it's a very interesting design.
Okay, thank you.
I was just gonna say, the form is really nice and it intrigues me, but I feel like when I see the initial sketches and how it differs from the model, it's kind of like a little, I don't know if distracting is the right word, but like it just is a little confusing to me. And I know it's hard to like get it to the initial sketch, but even if it's just a change in material to show like those different colors, like what you expect these to be made out of, you know, thinking more realistically, like if someone's actually going to be making this, you want to, you know, use the material that you expect, or at least talk about, you know, like this is what I expect it to be made out of. And I think it'll be easy for us to understand. And also, I know you were explaining the water and stuff and how that would flow. You can use, like, if it's hard, obviously, to show physically, you can Photoshop and use these digital programs to really make it easier to understand, and also add like human scale to show the interaction within the space.
Thank you.
So can I jump in on the sort of Eric on the end? I like the fact that you're using the blue and the green because it keeps it in the same realm of where you're going to be beginning and where you're ending. So I think the color is very important on yours. I sort of see this as it's shown in the final composite as sort of like this mushroom that grew out of the water and grew out of the greenery and then became somehow popped into place and became more of a crown, like an exploding crown on Lincoln Road. Again, I'd like to see the scale, I'd like to see the people, but I like in a way the fact that it looks, that it has almost like a look and feel of this hut that's been exploded inside out, or this living space that's been broken inside out, and then you're being welcomed into it with water pulling into it. I think the roundness and the curveness of it would be very much germane to what Lapidus would have liked. So I think, again, I get the idea that people are in your world, but I also don't get the look and feel of people in your world. I see them in some places. It would be great to see somebody splashing in that and having some fun around that, because it looks like it would be a lot of fun to experience. And so I give you, in terms of the delightfulness of the piece, I think it's incredibly delightful. I do see the connection from the start to the end. And I do agree with colleagues that if you were to strengthen the renderings and give more space to the renderings, that they would be more clear, and that the lineage of your ideas would be more clear if you analyze them in that manner. I also do think, and I don't know if my colleagues would agree, but don't apologize. What you show is what you show, and go strong with what you do show. And then when you add more, let that explain itself. But I don't think you needed to apologize. I think your graphics are wonderful.
Thank you.
Good. You guys want to hit those next? Introduce yourself.
Hello, hi, my name is Eva, and this is my pop-up. I named it Spiral. It is designed to bring people together and inspire them with Morris Lapidus work. I use nodes, edges, and graphics in my work.
If you're comfortable, you can take off your mask as well. If you're comfortable, you can take off your mask if you want to.
So this is my process. We began by drawing pieces of Lincoln Road and his structures. And in the second one, we zoomed in some more and tried to identify the different design aspects, which are nodes, graphics, and lines and edges. This is my first model that was inspired by one of the follies on Lincoln Road. And the second one is a close-up. I picked an area where the most action was going on. And these are my study models and my concepts.
I wanted to incorporate the graphics, so I chose the one with the lines to represent the lines that he used on the floor all over Lincoln Road. This is my site plan and my orthographics. I had decided to change it into a circle to make it more dynamic. And I placed it on the 900 block because I thought it fit in this one little area where there's a circle, and it fit like directly into his previous work. And this is my third axle and a perspective drawing, perspective image. And these are my final model. This is the final board composite. Is there any questions, comments, or concerns?
Okay, so I'll start. I really like your concepts and how they were composed on the page. I feel like they were easy for me to just look at them and understand what you were thinking. I think where I got lost is how you transitioned from your concepts to your final concept that you're working on, and how you said you like change it into a circle. Like, is there a reason that you chose for it to be a circle? Is it for like just how it fit into the area, or like any function in particular?
I felt like it brought people more together in a way, instead of having like this square box and a weird shelf in between. So people can walk around, and I also added these movable chairs so people can either move them to sit together or sit alone. And I felt like it worked with the space better too.
Okay, yeah, I just feel like there needs to be like a clear transition from your concepts, like your initial concepts to, or like your concept sketches to how you got to your final concept. Even if it's just explaining it, it could be helpful to understand that. But yeah, overall your model looks really nice. I like the human scale. I like how you're thinking about how people are going to move in the space, like the interaction with how there's movable seats. But yeah, good job.
Thank you.
Hi, if I remember correctly, your bus stop last year, it was the one with like, it was like with the multiple colors and it was kind of like wavy. Am I remember? Yes. So I think what's interesting with your work is that I can clearly tell that it's yours, which is a very good thing. As far as like the drawings and the model, I think they're very well done and they're very clear in a way, just seeing even from just your study models to your final. And I just like this comment, just kind of even just for everybody, as far as when you're phrasing how you're presenting your project, try to avoid "we were assigned to do this" or like "this was a requirement." Kind of act as if you did this project on your own, just because then like you are a designer, you are doing this project on your own, and that's not just for you, Eva, like that's literally for everybody. But yeah, just be very careful with how you phrase things. Just like you want to exude confidence, and I feel like you should be confident of your work because it's very good. And as far as again like a blanket statement, like with the presentation, I don't know if you can scroll up a little bit.
Yeah. So which one?
Just keep going. One more or another one there. So I've been noticing this a lot with everybody, is that we have a lot of text and a lot of kind of explaining what doesn't necessarily need to be explained. I feel like with these drawings, they should be able to read by themselves, and I feel like they do. So having this big block of text presentation kind of like distracts me, but that's just something to keep in mind for next time. But I think overall it's a very successful project.
Thank you.
Deborah, I think you're on mute. We don't hear you.
I wanted to say I agree with the colleagues about the presentation. I guess overall comments about text and overall comments about people and showing things more dynamically. I do feel that your project does show your progression really, really well. And I do think that in your languaging and the way you speak about your project, you could be more assertive and definitely not just rely on the fact that it was an assignment, but own it and make it be yours and wear it. So I think some of the interesting things that maybe you didn't say, but I see because of the way that you presented it so well, is that you were intending the black and white stripes to sort of peel off of the ground and sort of like in a swirl come up into a living new structure. And you don't really say that, but that's sort of the intent that I see in that 900 block drawing that you did, where you're showing sort of like the peeling up of the floor and it's coming up in black. And then what I think you've added by adding the circle and adding the textural representation of branches and leaves at the top, it allows on the interior, if you had shown it in Rhino, to see the shadow effect that trees play on space. So you've basically created a tree within inside of a garden, and the trunk is this incredible spiral. So there are ways you can speak about this project that make it very, very clear what it is you're doing and how you combine the ideas to the very end. And but I think the force of the work is there. If you can see that it looks like a spiral bark, a spiral base to a tree, and that you've made a tree shape leaf pattern, and that you've peeled the black and white from the ground, then I'm interpreting what you've done correctly. Is that kind of where you were going?
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so I'm trying to give you a language for what I call the big concept. And you really threw the curve to a box, which is what Lapidus always did. He was always boxing. He was always breaking out of the box and bringing in the curve. So I think you've done really, really well by Lapidus. You've shown an exclamation point. This is like the dot on the exclamation point. You know, he has this linear pond area, this linear water area, and then you put the dot at the end of it, which is sort of like in plan the exclamation. So I think you've done a great job, and you need to learn how to explain that with all the confidence that your drawings show.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eleanor Lewis. I'm an 11th grade architecture student at Dash, and this is my Staircase to Nowhere project. So in my project, I wanted to celebrate the flair and theatricality of Morris Lapidus using the form and design elements of my project.
It's the other computer.
Oh, okay, sorry. Oh.
No.
All right. So in order to create a pop-up that really fit in and understood Lincoln Road, I needed to do some research. So I walked around Lincoln Road with my family and my phone camera, and I took a lot of photos of just where I was standing, where people were walking, and where like the design was telling you to do those things. So the more I observed through the eyes of like a camera, the more I realized that there were all of these like hidden cues that were directing people where to go and what to do in different places without anyone even realizing. And that was really, really interesting to me. And I think like the structure on the left, known as the cufflinks, which are just a set of two benches, those really stood out to me as a place where that was happening. It was like cued to people that this was a place where you can sit down and put your stuff down subliminally through the shade roof, through the sort of overall structure of a cufflink as like an item that you accessorize with. Like this is a place to adjust things and put your bags down. And I thought that was really interesting. So I sort of came back to this location again and again through my design. So when I was drawing up my concepts, I sort of came back to the idea that before he was an architect, Morris Lapidus was a set designer. And that definitely influenced the way that he thought as an architect and led him to create some really interesting and novel designs that I think in the long run really changed the way that people thought about architecture. So I really wanted to get to that sense of theatricality in my design. And so throughout these different concepts that I was drawing up, you can see the idea of an elevated stage, sort of metaphorical curtains, and just the idea that you come into the space and you feel special because that's something that Morris Lapidus really wanted to get to in his work. Nowhere is this idea of sort of design to make people feel sort of transformed. Nowhere is this idea more strong than the concept of the staircase to nowhere. So the staircase to nowhere is interesting because it is basically completely goes against the idea of form follows function. It's essentially a staircase that just serves the purpose of being a glamorous staircase. So this picture here is the Fontainebleau staircase, and it's an iconic staircase that's been featured in films such as like The Marvelous Miss Maisel, and it's sort of a lasting iconic architectural feature that has even been adapted to modern use in places like the Highline Traffic Theater in New York City, and even at like Prez Art Museum. There's these stairs that sort of go downwards, not really towards anything but the water, and the focus is on the staircase, not where it leads. And so I thought that was really interesting that Morris Lapidus sort of came up with this idea, and it led to this whole sort of use of this design element in the modern world. So that's something that I really wanted to highlight in my design as well. The idea that like this staircase existed so that people could walk down it in glamorous outfits. Usually people who were middle-class people who were on vacation, and they could have this experience that was normally reserved for basically the very wealthy. And so it was architecture as this like transformative experience. And I thought that was really interesting. So this led me to develop the staircase to nowhere concept. It sort of follows a lot of the design elements of the Fontainebleau staircase. It's a sort of cylindrical shape and has the sort of sloping staircase. And in this case, the staircase is even more sort of metaphorical because it's not a staircase at all, it's the roof. And I thought this was sort of extension of the idea of the staircase to nowhere. And I thought that was a good way to sort of show Morris Lapidus's legacy and the way that he's still influencing the design world today. So in this design, it's situated between the two cufflink structures. So those are the two benches. And it has this window here. It has this window here that all of these holes, the sort of, as Morris Lapidus would call it, cheese holes, look out onto the area around the structure. And this large window looks directly at one of the cufflinks. On the window, there's sort of projected a display that shows you, just sort of annotates over the cufflink structure, and it's telling you how the design is directing people. It's showing you how the forms are giving us sort of some subliminal message, and it's making people see this sort of almost a structure you'd ordinarily see as mundane in a completely new way. And that's and so it would sort of ask the question, like, if this one piece of Lincoln Road, if this one piece of design has so much meaning and depth behind it, then maybe everything else does too. And so it make people aware of just the design world that's going on all the time that we're not even aware of. Okay, sorry. So here are my some additional drawings. And here is my final model put into the setting of Lincoln Road. And and you can sort of see clearly the main electronic display as well as some other display cases that can display miniature models of the Lincoln Road Follies. And here's my final board. Thank you.
Overall, this project is really strong. I really see it in Lincoln Road, and I don't know if it's because you photoshopped it onto Lincoln Road, but like that was really clever, and it really helps sell the project, which I think is your goal here. And the confidence in how you speak about your work also really helps sell your project. And the only thing I would say, your presentation, just shorten it a little bit. I know you seems like you know a lot about your work, which is nice to hear. But let's if you talk more about your concept other than just because it is important how you got to your concept, but I feel like I really wanted to hear more just about the concept itself. But overall, it was really good. I love your drawings, the use of color, and it just looks really cohesive and bright, and I feel like that's what Lincoln Road is all about. So good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, I remember your bus stop, and I always commend you for your extensive research, because I think it's very interesting, especially I feel like you went past the level that people would normally go. So I think that's very commendable. And yeah, just as what Shelby said, I mean, the drawings are very beautiful as far, but I think also to enhance it even more, even though it's stunning as the way it is, I think it would be interesting to have a drawing that showcases a different angle of it, because it's something so, I feel like since it is circular, every angle is really interactive. I feel like you focus a lot on this one view. So it'd be very interesting to see on the other side looking in, even though it's like a half outdoor, half whatever. But I do think it's a very clever, just in all aspects, it feels very intentional.
Thank you. I think you might be muted.
Unmute. Hi, I agree with the colleagues that it's a well done presentation, wonderful concepts rendered. Most people would not consider Lapidus a phenomenologist, but he was ahead of his time in allowing people a transformative experience, and putting him in the category of a phenomenologist as an architect is a wonderful thing to see a young student do. So thank you for that. I hope that was fun to learn, that architecture can be an experience. As an extension of the experience, on the way that you've allowed other people to key into this information kiosk that you've created about space. It's sort of a spatial unwind of Lincoln Road. And I think it's very interesting, it's very clever. And it almost begs that, like you said, that each one wants to have this didactic right in front of it, so that everybody stops at each one of them and gives each one of them credit for what they do in directing and the flow of traffic. So I really appreciate that you went through all of that. I would wish that your site plan would show the engagement of the stripes of the bottom with the stripes of yours, even if your stair had been black and white stripes as the roof went up, and you're peeling through the layer of understanding of this space. Like you could have made, I think, Eleanor, the roof lines, those deckings could have been black and white. You could have, I think when you put the circle down on the pavement, you could have been really cavalier with stripping it again with the black and white to make it look like it's absolutely in place, and that it's not an addition to it, but it is still part of the original. So I think a lot of the finishing touches would be making it look as if it was organic and in that place. And that's the only part about it that didn't really fit for me, is that it could have more of a relationship to how it lands on that black and white stripes. And it could have been more intentional if you had married it with some color on the bottom section. And then for the other thing, the cheese holes and you could have had a bean pole there for fun, and that would have had all of Lapidus in one place. But thank you very much for observing so much how Lapidus subtly directed people to do things that they might not otherwise do. That's called, he called these things intentional nonsense. And they've been written about as intentional nonsense, and they are not nonsensical at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric, and this is my project. Huh? This? Yeah, so this is my design. It's meant to celebrate Lapidus as a kind of modernist style with those simplistic kind of smooth surfaces and these really angular shapes. So the process started with us researching the follies, and this is how I kind of really got his style, how he uses the angles to like make it interesting and kind of let the people walking by like interact and see them from different angles, and that kind of attracts them to come a little closer and see from a different perspective. And once I made the model of this folly, and I could like play around with it and put it in a position where it wasn't originally meant to be, that's how I got the idea for my model, for my design. And yeah, this is the idea, and it's supposed to be kind of like these opposing angles. If you see them from a certain perspective, they're like supposed to make a quadrilateral, but it would always be different from whatever point you're standing at and looking at it. And you know, I think that gives it like an interaction factor to the design, so like people would want to see it from different angles and maybe come inside and see the actual exposition. And this is an orthographic view of it, and there's like a person here so you can see the scale, and the top view really shows the way the angles work. And yeah, this is my final board composite. That's it. Any questions, comments?
I think overall, I think it's very apparent that there could have been more effort put into it, just because there's like certain things that feel unresolved, and just from the way that the drawings are presented, they're not inked, and I feel like there's a very big disconnect between initial. I'm kind of lost in your train of thinking of how we got to this point. So I think that it is very interesting as these angles, and it does feel very Miami, but I would just like to see it as a presentation done in a way that shows like the true complexity and the true grandiosity of this, because I feel like it's not reflected right now.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what Michelle said. I think just going slower with your model making as well, like use Elmer's glue. I know it takes a little longer to dry, but it'll really help look cleaner. Also inking the drawings, especially right now we're online, it's harder to read them on a presentation, which is how you're probably going to be presenting it to colleges anyway. So colleges want to see your concepts, and I feel like we're lacking that, like how you transition from one to the other. Yeah, like we want to see your thought process, and I feel like that's just not being shown the best that it could be right now.
Okay.
I want to say, Eric, I watched this and I watched this and I watched this, and it had a lot of non-change. And so, you know, the fact is that the clever wording and clever conceptualizing will never take place of actual evolution and design, because you can see it. Just like the way that the seasons come in every season, you know, the beginning and the end, we see changes in plants, we see how time changes things. What's so remarkable about this is that the time that you had, you didn't change it. And so I would say, you know, don't be a heart too soon made glad. You know, don't love what you do at first so soon that you don't work on it more and that you don't stretch more. Your words said things about playing with parallelograms, playing with angles, playing with edges, but we don't see any of that play. So in other words, the non-changingness of this design over time is what is the most striking element. And so either you fell in love with it so much that it was the only thing that you wanted to see, or you just didn't want to go any further with it. So I can't really tell, but I can tell you this: a word salad will never make up for work not done. And in the end, anybody that wants to look at something and try to find things in something, it can't be done. The start to the finish says it's almost a 10% effort, start to finish. Thanks.
Got it. Thank you.
I'm 7.
Yeah, try it next.
If you go out and just scroll to the bottom, it will be there.
Oh,
To the bottom. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Melanie Mejia, and this is my pop-up design. It's called Convergence Lapidus, and it's like a meeting point for all of Lapidus's follies on Lincoln Road, and a place where people can come and learn about them. When I was starting off studying all the follies on Lincoln Road, I noticed that all of them were made up of simple geometric shapes into these like complex designs. And that was something that really intrigued me, and I wanted to explore it a bit more.
Good morning, this is the CAP office, and I would like to ask that all seniors be released from their program classes to meet me in the NPR for our Portfolio Day orientation. Now, during reading at 9:15, all seniors, please gather in the NPR. Thank you.
Then I decided to study this specific folly, the zigzag, because it's made up of two simple shapes, a zigzag on the top and then a bunch of rectangles. And even though it's only made up of two shapes, it's it stands out from Lincoln Road. Like you can see it when you're walking and you're like, oh, that's the zigzag. So I wanted to explore that. This is a page of research where I took a triangle and I like morphed it into a bunch of different shapes to see what would be interesting so I could apply it to my concept. When I was beginning to plan out my concept, I noticed that the zigzag folly had a lot of different paths of entry. And that's something I really want to incorporate into my folly, but using the triangle, because the triangle in like plan view looked like an arrow, and that's where I wanted to go from. So using my study models, I expanded on this idea, and here I use a platform to elevate the pop-up off of the ground so it stands out from the rest of the road. When I was choosing the site location for the pop-up, I noticed that most of Lincoln Road is pretty much the same: shops, restaurants, the Follies, pretty evenly spaced out among Lincoln Road. But to the far right, there's this park called Soundscape Park, which is full of architecture. And from that park, many people could come down to Lincoln Road, people who are interested in architecture. And if they come to Lincoln Road and see the Folly straight on, they'll definitely be intrigued by something new. This is the specific location of it. In the floor plan, I wanted to make sure that there were many points of entry, so people could come in from the shops, walking straight down Lincoln Road, or just from any direction in general. This is my front view and my back view. The section and the side elevation. And then using the axonometric projections, I wanted to show like the layers of the pop-up and how complex it is. And these are my final axonometric drawings. This is my final model. And my final board composite. Thank you.
Hi. I think overall it's a very successful project. I really commend you for your drawing abilities. I think they're very well executed, from the research to like just even the composition of those sheets. I think is very, very successful. And then going into your concepts, and they're very diagrammatic. And I feel like, you know, you're not afraid to put text or put your notes onto them, which is very nice. And I think the final design, especially with those axonometrics, are very beautiful. However, in the final model, I am a little bit confused, just because I feel like, is the final model finished?
No.
Okay, so that explains it. But of course, I think for the sake of your design, and I think for the sake of this project, because you obviously put so much time and effort into it, please finish that, because I feel that would really like set the thing in stone. And also commend you for your site plan, because you're the first person to put like the entirety of Lincoln Road. And yes, this is a relatively small project, but it's very, very important to even, you know, put your view to the smallest and to the largest. So I think that was very successful.
I commend you on how clean the model looks. Like those edges look sharp, and it really helps with like not distracting from what's really going on. Your model is really pretty, and your research is also very nicely done. I like the axo and how clean your lines are.
Good morning, teachers and students, and welcome to another great day at Dash. Now please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Could you wait a second?
I to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now let's have a short moment of silence. Thank you, and you may now be seated. Attention all 11th grade students. The junior SAT school day will be Wednesday, March 2nd during A1 and A3. All MDCPS juniors have been signed up automatically for free. This is a college reportable SAT that counts the same as a Saturday administration. See the school website or Mr. Britton for more information. Attention all students in grades 9, 10, and 11. Subject selection forms for 9th grade students are due on Tuesday and Wednesday in Ms. McKinley's class. Forms for 10th and 11th grade students are due on Wednesday, January 19th in the design program class. If you have not yet received your subject selection form, please pass by your counselor's office as soon as possible. Forms are located on the cabinet next to Dr. Insignata's office. Some students, because of absences, may not be ready to turn in their forms by the due date. If this is the case, please pass by your counselor's office during lunchtime with any questions. All senior students, if you want to be in the Grass Bash field trip to Islands of Adventure and Universal Studios on April 1st, please pay for your tickets through OSP. If you have any questions, you can ask Ms. Castillo, Ms. Murias, or any of the senior class officers. Remember that the last day to pay is January 31st. If you don't pay, then you cannot participate in the field trip. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great Dash Day.
Okay, I was just gonna say one more thing. That when you're done with your model, photoshopping that onto the site, because you did go into detail on the site, could really help, because I was expecting after you talked about it, I was like, oh, she'll probably show what it would look like. So yeah, just photoshopping that onto there with some people to show the interaction with the space, I think will really help you deal with your project. But good job.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll give a few comments, and I want to say the research was wonderful. The drawings are beautiful and give your idea complete start to finish. You get the sense of where you were going. And the presentation doesn't lack very many qualities that make it almost nearly professional and ready for a magazine. But that being said, I did think that the biomorphism story that you were going through, and then that you end up with triangles, is a little interesting in that, and the way that they're aligned and so regimented. That's something that is interesting to me, that you wouldn't have done more zagging with these edges or something, that you might not have explored the in and out play of these triangles a little bit more, so that they weren't such a similar experience as you're going through it. If they could have rotated or flipped, or something could have happened that would have made them more dynamic than walking through a hallway of columns. I think with the experience that I feel is that when you walk through it, it'll be a hallway of columns. And I wish that the experience on the interior would feel less like walking through a hall of columns. And the exterior says something really delightful, the angles, but I don't think that that's what you're feeling at the interior. My colleagues might disagree, but I don't get the experience of anything less than walking through a hallway. Now, that being said, I don't think that's bad, but I think for where you put it on Drexel, I think if you want it to be an entry to Lincoln Road and be that kind of an entry feature, put it at the front where that crazy roach figure is, and make it be the thing that people walk through to enter Lincoln Road. And then it has all the promenades, and to have a promenade and to have a series of columns that are so straight like this would be a great experience for an entry port into Lincoln Road. So I would say, when you look at the site, instead of putting it as an add-on from where Frank Gehry's is coming to Drexel, leading you over to Espanola Way, turn it, rotate it, put it at the very beginning, and make an entry feature, which Lincoln Road is missing right now. So I think your structure is strong enough to be an entry feature, and with just a little bit more play, I think, in the planes, you could make it more interesting as an experience as well.
Thank you.
Reminder, we have a schedule. We have to finish. Only 2 minutes.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Thomas Pace, and I'm mainly exploring light, form, structure, and edges in this folly. In my first, okay, so this was my first research, and what I'm doing here is I'm mainly focusing, these are close-ups of parts of follies that he's already created, and I'm mainly focusing on form. You can see that I like to mainly focus on geometric shapes the most, and that's something that you'll see throughout my research towards this final folly. Also, I put a big emphasis on light and how I can use that in my folly. And this one, I kind of took that last research page and I took it to another level. I kind of just abstracted it as much as I could. Again, studying geometric forms, very angular geometric forms, studying lights. And then on the right side, I was trying to see how crowded I could get this kind of piece before it became almost too much. So to do that, I made a print of the one on the left, and then I ripped it up each time, ripping it up more and more times, and then photographing it as I went along. For this third research, I wanted to focus more on symmetry in his work. And so what I did was on this left one, which was the first, I split that down the middle and then mirrored it. And then the one in the middle is both of these papers overlaid on top of each other. And that creates kind of like a sense of depth through this, almost as if you could reach through the shapes. This was the existing folly on Lincoln Road that I decided to model. It was the one that felt the most abstract to me. And something that I noticed about this one was that it starts at a wide base and it goes to a point. So it kind of gives off the essence that it's growing out of the ground. And if you look through a lot of his other follies, it also gives off that same essence, but through the opposite way, by having a point at the bottom or thin sticks at the bottom, going up to something big at the top. These are my concepts. And as you can see, I'm still pushing that idea of having abstracted shapes. On the right, you can kind of see how I'm trying to take that idea of having something growing out of the ground and just find new ways of kind of experimenting with that. These are some study models that I made, and this was really just to continue exploring how I could utilize lights and form in my piece. And yeah. This folly would be placed, unlike Melanie's, it would be placed on the opposite side of the road. And the goal with this would be those who went to Soundscape Park to experience the architecture there would have to flow through Lincoln Road to get to the Molly. So it becomes more about the journey than the actual final destination. You got to actually experience all of his work before you get to kind of like this closing point, which is my folly. These are my views from above and below. So what I did here, kind of looking for shapes to use, like I did with my abstracted piece, where I took forms from the models from his structures that already exist. And this one, what I did was I took forms and shapes from orthographics that were made of structures on Lincoln Road. And I oversimplified those and created shapes that would fit together. And then as you move on, I kind of, for the roof plan, I wanted to have certain points elevated and certain ones drop down. So in order to do that, to have it still flat surfaces, I had to triangulate these shapes with 4, 5, 6 sides on them. And then for the bottom, you can kind of see the reason why I put 5 bases instead of 4 or 3 is because I want, when the person looks at it straight on, I want them to not go through it in a straight line, but I want them to kind of weave throughout it. And that was something that Morris Lapidus did a lot. He said that there's not one straight line in the human body, and he wanted people to flow through his work. So that's something that I'm also emphasizing. These are my orthographic views. And you can also see here through my front and side elevations that when you're looking at it, you can see straight through the other side. And that's because of these holes that I've cut out in the middle. These holes also give off the illusion that it's very light, which is something that he did with the sticks, kind of holding up those big surfaces. And yeah. These are some of my other views, exploded axonometrics. And what I did for this one on the right, I separated each one of the base shapes that I used and just moved them so that you could see each part individually. This is something that I modeled in Rhino, and this was mainly just to get the scale of the person, and this is the actual location that it would be on the road. So it's replacing the old sculpture that was on the 1/100 block. And this is my final composite board. Any questions, comments?
I can go first if you want me to. Thank you, Thomas, for a wonderful project. The artistic approach process is interesting. You picked the A-frame, which Lapidus always wanted to have for artists displaying work underneath it. The process is like burrows, where you're cutting parts and putting things together. It also speaks to like Andy Warhol with the reverse flip and staining paper. I don't know if you're familiar with William Burroughs or with Andy Warhol's approaches, but this idea that you're going through a process, it's a very artistic process, which I think is very wonderful to see. I love the fact that you walk Lincoln Road, that you sort of did a fractalization of the triangle. You sort of understood Lincoln Road to be triangles, and then you found these little derivative ones that are fractalizations of that, which I think is very nice. And Zaha in her work says scale is everything. So you've sort of gone from one scale to another scale with the same shape. So I think it is indicative of a style and a process that we're going through today. The way that you would weave people through the experience, I get that. I think Lapidus would love the flow. And I also think that putting it at the other end of Lincoln Road at the Lenox across from the Herzog and Demeron, again, you could have put a section through to show the relationship to the Herzog and Demeron. It's a very modern statement next to a very modern approach. And I think would make a great entry feature at the end of Lincoln at Alton. What I was hoping that you would say was that those cutouts would go through the ceiling as well. And so I wish that, I love that light, you've got it going left to right, going through the sides, but I wish that you had punctured through the space and those that ceiling that you put on it and the roof that you put on it, so that we could have seen light coming from the top, playing and interplaying with that interior space. And as far as the presentation, it's fabulous. I really enjoyed watching the process, but I really like hearing the different artistic tacks that you took in making it happen. And I just wish that in one of the drawings you show cutouts that look like they're going through the roof. I wish that we could have experienced light coming through the roof.
Yeah, I think overall it's a very successful project. I think you took an approach that no one else really did, which is very commendable and is very inspiring. As far as like your final drawings, I think are very beautiful. They're very clean. And you were talking about light a lot, so I'm interested to see what those elevations would look like rendered the way that you did previously, like in your research and your development. And I think also just for everybody really too, your elevations, they don't have to only be your design. It would be nice to see context with them, even in just like an orthographic view. It doesn't, like, showing the context doesn't only have to be in perspective or plan. So I feel like, especially that you have like these cutouts, it would have been so interesting to see like that band of Lincoln Road and seeing what you would see across. But I think it's very interesting, and I really like the approach and kind of like starting out so abstract, but still making it humanly interactive, I think is very interesting and successful.
I think everyone said what I was basically going to say, but overall, really strong project. This final board, you can just see it's very strong. And I really commend you for using that artistic side to influence your architecture. I feel like if you continue to do that, it'll really make your work stand out from the rest. So good job.
Thank you. That's it. This one. Yeah.
Hi, so I'm Melina Shine, and this is my pop-up celebrating Lapidus. Here we started with our research for Lapidus and the Follies. So the first one is when we really zoomed in for all the details and to research Lapidus and what he did with Lincoln Road and what he and his style. So the second one, we really play with these terms and try to experience more and develop like an understanding of it. Here are my concepts to elaborate on that. We started with these 6 drawings of concepts and what I wanted to achieve and inspired by him. And then we developed more from that by taking one of them here and really playing with these curves and edges and what I wanted to do with those. Here you can see in my study model, this is the one I ended up choosing. Here we have the site plans. You can see it's in the 700 block, and then some more views, so you can see more of my idea. And here you can see the edges that I use and with combining with the curves, and also the plants are on top of a trellis, so you can really see like the light coming through, and it creates this open, like welcoming space, and really encouraging people to come in and walk through. So my final model, you can see I use those cutouts from the original Lapidus idea, where you can even, here in my concepts, sorry if I go back, I even use those the cutouts as like shelves too. As a shelves to display his work, and you can see that's what I ended up doing in my final model. And to like an experience from like all angles, and you can see what he was trying to do. And then here is my final board. questions?
Hi. I think there is potential, and I can see that because you clearly have observed certain things and you were able to analyze Lapidus's work. However, I do think conceptually and just executing in the final presentation could have been done better. Just with, maybe it's just spending more time on it, or just technically, because the sheet on the right the right bottom corner, that's your plan, your elevation, your roof plan, correct?
Yeah, here, so you can see the different like views and like how you would walk through the space.
Right. So right now, just like the way that they're put on the page, that it's not bad that they're done in pencil, right?
Yeah, pencil and.
Okay, it's not bad that they're done in pencil, but when you do use pencil, since it is grainy, you have to be careful with your line weights even more though, so than just ink, and of course text, and just like some of the angles just aren't right, and that could have been the scanning, and just also with everybody, like I know it's really hard to have a scanner right now, but like I think Adobe Scan on your phone, I think that's available in every app store. Use that, or even if you have an iPhone, the Notes app has a scanner, and that's what I used when I couldn't. So I just think I do commend you for the initial process, but I do think you could have pushed it a little bit more.
I think I feel like you can't be afraid to go back on that concept sketch and like really work into it, because even if it's like for the assignment, it's just like 1 page of concepts. Don't be afraid to do 2, 3, 4 pages of concepts until you finally get something you're fully content with. I feel like a lot of times, like at least for me, the concepts part takes the longest, but it truly does narrate the rest of the project and guide the rest of your project. So that, and then also like for your presentation, be more confident in how you speak, in your work, and just inking your work. Like Michelle was saying, you use pencil. I feel like ink could help it read more clean, because yeah, pencil does like smudge and it just gets really messy. And then I know you were saying that you want to show like there's light coming through, and I think you need to show the light coming through, show how you picture people experiencing this space. But yeah.
Hi, Melina, I think that you spent a lot of time sitting and drawing, and I really do appreciate the amount of time that you spent on Lincoln Road, or that you studied these objects, their edges, their nodes, their interaction. And I do think that that you did come up with some very interesting structures that could have been developed more. But I do think that you are showing them, that the final is not showing them, but that you do have them there. And it's almost like there are other drawings that I would have picked to have been the final drawings than the ones that you picked, but that's okay. But I think the not showing where it goes on Lincoln Road is a big miss for me. Not giving me a context to tie it into is the biggest miss. Other than that, I can kind of begin to feel that you have a very rude hut, and I wouldn't mind having a rude hut on Lincoln Road, something that's made of bamboo and something that's made of different materials and something that's not sleek and something that's not perfect. And I think an imperfect object on Lincoln Road would be such a contrast to the perfection of the concrete, that I was wondering if you were kind of looking at all that concrete, and in the end you were seeing a weathered response, whether or not you felt that or not. But this sort of looks like a weathered roof hut where you're trying to show something completely different. You didn't say that in your language or in your conversation, so I don't know if that's true or not, but the final is in such contrast to the stark geometry of the others that I'm wondering, if you answer that, are you toning it down to make it sort of look like a water washed, like a stone that's been washed in the water, or object that's been handled by the wind? Are you looking to somehow soften the edges? And that's what I thought I saw happening in your final project. Is that true?
Yeah, well, so I did want to make it fit into Lincoln Road with all like the plants and stuff, but it was supposed to be like straight and kind of use those curves like Lapidus. I'm not sure if it was supposed to be like a hut.
Well, anyway, I think the idea of softening the edges would have been something Lapidus would have loved, and I was tolerating all the softness of the finals around the idea that the softening of the edges that I was seeing in some of the other project prototypes, I thought that was very nice. And you were the first one to kind of soften all the edges instead of going with all the hard edges. And I think that's a different tack, and I think that should be applauded.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Lucio. This is my pop-up in Lincoln Road. So my design was based on the idea of flow and graphics. Oh. So these are my studies of the Lincoln Road Follies. I've noticed that the designs created by Lapidus have very geometric shapes, and they are all also contrasting with each other. Each one is have different form and different purpose. So these are my concepts. So I really like the idea of Lapidus wanted to use his designs to lead people through a space, using the flow of the lines of the forms and each design has a purpose, and so, using that idea, I created this pop-up. As you can see, I use the form is based on like curvilinear shapes. And you could see in the plant that it's in between two spaces of movement, and people would go through here by following the road and eventually following the form of the model and exit. So it doesn't disturb the flow of Lincoln Road. And this, these are the axonometrics. It's a close-up, and inside this pop-up there will be, it's made up of two parts. One will have the display of the models of Lapidus's designs on each of these platforms. And I chose to use the cylindrical columns because in his works there's a combination of geometric shapes and curvilinear forms, like in the Fontainebleau Hotel. And on the other side is a form that follows this one. It mirrors it, but instead of the the columns, it uses like wires and fabric attached and stretched out for a surface to display like information about Lapidus. And yeah, so this is like an exhibition space for people to learn about his works. These are my rendered views. And so this is my top view, and this is when you put my model in Google Earth. This is the location that I chose. It's right next to the big triangle. So I chose that location because I wanted the viewer, the pedestrians to immediately like, notice his work right after learning about his life. Yeah, and this is the final pic.
Hello?
Hello?
What software did you use for your drawings and your renders?
Hello?
What program did you use to make your
Right.
drawings?
Right.
Rhino? Okay. I think overall it's a very dynamic composition. Were you guys given like a certain like restriction as in scale or like square footage? No? Okay. So
Oh,
I think
yeah. It was a 15 by 15 by 15. That was the.
okay.
I-
Just
I don't
because
think
like
this had gone out the limit, but I feel like it needed to be like that because it needs to follow the form of the movement.
right, okay. So that's one big thing that I noticed from yours is that even from your initial sketches, you thought bigger than I feel like everybody else, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I think, this is obviously highly conceptual and I think it's easy for you to think outside the box. And execution wise, I do like the overall design with the mirroring, but as far as the execution of the presentation, I would like to see these drawings more than just line weight drawings, especially if you're talking about materiality, because you mentioned how both kind of sides are different. I would like to see how that interacts and how the experience changes from one side to the other. But I think overall it is very good. I would just be careful with the final drawings.
I feel like you really captured that flow that you were talking about, how you can walk through this space. I think just showing that with like the experience, like how someone is experiencing this space would help you like back up that point of like someone's walking through this space. I think that would be a really nice view to see. But overall, like it is very nicely done and it's easy to understand. I feel like your drawings really speak for themselves. But also like presentation, like really sell this work. And just like, yeah, you're and just be kind to others.
Sorry you broke up, but could you repeat that, please?
Oh, I was just saying the presentation, like be more confident in what you present because your work is really good, and just work on the presentation a little more, like how you're showing this and presenting it to us. But overall, it's like really nice and it's very like easy to just look at your drawings and understand what your thought process was with it.
Thank you.
I I agree with my colleagues that the presentation looks really good. It's easy to get lost in Rhino, and it's also very easy with Arctic to make very beautiful drawings once you get it in there. So I appreciate the modeling time that you took on that. I would have liked to have seen the process drawings broken into individuals a little bit more and separated more, just so we could see the evolution. But that being said, they're well rendered. And the comment that I have for you is that it's not so much out of scale. I don't feel if you had done a section at that point going through to the A-frame next to it, because of your palm trees, I know that it's not even as tall as the A-frame because the A-frame goes almost to the top of the palm trees. So if you had shown context and had given the A-frame to the left of your model, which would have been easy for someone like you to model. So if you had modeled the street and then put the A-frame there, the question of context, it doesn't matter. About the 15 square feet that you had, you've narrowed it and it's not a box. Okay, but that flow that you have there is probably not more than 15 square feet total if you were to put it all together. So the narrowing of it and the expanding of it, I can forgive that. Also, the screen approach is very nice because again, it acts as an entry feature. And one of the things I mentioned in class is that Lapidus's Lincoln Road misses now an entry feature at the top and at the end. I think yours could flip just as well and be where the roach is and become a beautiful element at the other end of Lincoln Road, which would give it more space and more breadth and would allow for people to experience it along Washington. And it would have more emphasis like a billboard to Washington and Lincoln Road at that entry feature. So I see this, although I do understand that this is along axis with the New World Symphony and the curves that you use are very much like Frank Gehry's as he's using at the entry of the New World Symphony. So I think contextually, it also works with the stuff that's at the New World Symphony that was done by Frank Gehry. So I think two drawings for you, a section to show the A-frame would give scale, and then a section, a longitudinal section showing Gary's sail would also help to put this in place. And then I would try to put some, since you've gone this far with it, I would try to give it some materiality. And I would have tried to have shown some kind of a rendering on that surface. Thank you.
Thank
you. Are my colleagues uncomfortable with what I'm saying? I get flinched remarks. I'm looking going, maybe I shouldn't ask. I do know Lincoln Road really well. And so I know all these little vectors and all these little points that they're talking about because I've studied it for like almost 20 years. So if I'm not trying to be any more than just as realistic as I can be about that space. And particularly the fact that Lincoln Road has no front or end right now. It's terrible. It has no entry. They've put Jersey walls up. They have a Jersey wall for the entrance of Lincoln Road. I mean, that's how terrible it is.
I don't disagree with you at all. This is Eric.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't sure, Eric, if I was getting too specific about the context, but I do think it would have been wonderful. Thanks.
Hello, good morning. My name is Tomas Vargas. And first, I'd like to thank you all for coming here, for sparing some of your time to come and listen to our presentation. So I'm going to start with mine. All right. As you know, we were tasked with designing a temporary pop-up for a specific site of our choosing in Lincoln Road. All of these essential all of the decisions made, all of the creative decisions were based off of the design elements of Morris Lapidus. My temporary structure is meant to reflect the principles of Mr. Lapidus while also taking a more modern approach, but I'll get to that later. My pop-up celebrates the use of light, structure, graphics, and nature. And nature, while not being a very present element, as many people would think, I do believe it is essential. That's why I decided to make my investigation on that, or some of it at least. Okay, first we start with the process. The process consisted of me going to the actual site, kind of doing a field study of the follies in there, analyze some of his work, And as some of my colleagues have pointed out, mainly the flow of people and overall the attractiveness of the site itself. I also did some drawings, some of them reflecting like some like the most apparent types of views that were done that like the follies show. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. After careful consideration and studying follies and shape, I decided to choose this folly as my study, since it really represents some of Lapidus's elements, such as, let's say, landmark. It has a use of shape and edge. And yeah, we started to make the plans from the ground. Really, all we had to work with was some top views. So it was up to us to make the plans, really study the shape. And I think it was a very good challenge for us. I think we really, with just one view, we were able to make really good plans. And such a study of that is really cool. And I like how it came out. I like how my folly came out. I think it's really represented well. As we dove deeper into the project, we started to conceptualize some ideas for some pop-ups. First I was going for a more subtle and kind of very straight type of approach to my folly. I also started to consider some natural elements along in there, and that turned into sort of this organic look to my structure. I wasn't content with some of the designs that I made, so I continued to make more, and I decided to maybe mash in some shapes together. I continued to analyze and, of course, kept in mind some of the design elements. And ultimately, it led me to finding this sort of balance between parametric and ephemeral architecture. It's a type of approach that's been very, it's new as of late. It's still in development. It's a growing type of architecture. But I think in order to really get the idea that this is a modern interpretation of what Mr. Lapidus would have done with the design elements, I decided it'd be best to just stick with a shape that both combines the organic feel to it and also keeping aspects such as edges, angles, and other sorts. My shape overall was the one that resembles the geometric shape present in nature, actually called a Voronoi. And the Voronoi is actually present, in the patches of a leaf, in like the wrinkles of the earth when it cracks, in the patches of a giraffe. It's a present shape, and it's an organic present shape in nature. And I thought that'd be like a really interesting solution, since a lot of parametric architecture is kind of based off of like that intersection of lines, much resembling my colleague Thomas's design, really, but really with another type of approach to it, which I think makes it a bit more unique and interesting. I ended up designing some plans here. As you can see, my orthographic views and a top view. I really wanted this folly to just kind of stand out from all of, like, let's say, static elements in the area I chose in Lincoln Road. I also planned it to be very versatile for people to interact with and move around, continue the flow, as you would say. Here in my explored axonometric, I want to point out something about my folly, which I think is interesting. With new cutting edge technology, we're able to make these type of like screens. They are made of PVC plastic, not plastic. Yeah, they're made of PVC. They're cut and then they are turned into sort of like these screens. These like, they work just the same as a television, but the cool thing is that it's projected on both sides depending on what side you're looking at. And I really like this idea. Incorporating new technology into an evolving project, I thought was really interesting, and I wanted to incorporate that. The screens would show let's say, different views of the follies and like sort of like this information center present in Lincoln Road, as well as maybe some synopsis from Mr. Lapidus himself from more immersive experience. And this is a picture of my final model. I think it came out pretty good. Some of the edges could have used a bit of work, but I think the end result really expresses well the idea and concept that I had in mind. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns.
Yeah, I think overall it's a very successful project. I like this, especially now that on the board I can see your first study model versus now. It really feels like just like a remixed version of that, and it feels very much like yours. And I think overall, the whole project is very clean, especially in your model making. I think that's something to applaud. What's interesting that I noticed from the beginning is that you did pay attention to the floor, especially like with your study model and seeing like how it interacted and having that big, like not just having the partee, but also the surrounding area, I think very much helped you, because in the end I can see we didn't really talk about it a lot, but the little changes in the flat surface, and I find very interesting, and I think overall it's very interactive. And one thing that I've noticed, not just with yours, but with everyone's like site plans, is that again, with the floor, like we have these iconic stripes, you know, and I keep thinking, I'm like, why does it feel empty? And so I think it would have been interesting to interplay that. I just think with everybody as well, of really look at your site and really look at every single element, because every element is very important. And I think it's a very high concept, strong concept. Just, I would like to see these sketches scanned better, just to give them like the better justice, because I think they already read well, but I think executed better would be even more.
All right, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And yeah, as you can see, this was like a very changing progress. Yeah, it was a progress that was always changing. I was always designing one concept and then moving on to another one. So settling on a final shape was really the most consuming part of the project, I think. But the end result I liked, and I think that's what matters. Well,
overall, your project is really strong. Sorry, I think
sorry, you cut out.
I don't know if you can hear me. Okay, I was saying that your project is really strong overall, and I like that you went beyond what the project was asking for and started incorporating the technology aspect to it. Your final board looks really strong, and I appreciate all the human scale you added, even in the drawings, and even in the study model. Like, it really shows like the time and effort you put into this. And then I think maybe just adding color to your final drawings, you can consider doing that. That could really enhance your project.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a good idea.
Tomas, I think overall, like my colleagues have said, start to finish, it's a, you know, it has been a process. You can see it though, but it's blended to the end to make a product that we can all follow. So I think the storyline is there. And I think the drawings are there as well. Maybe, as the colleagues point out, a little more separation of the concept, so we could see more how it went from the biomimicry to your Verona and the tessellation idea. That might be, if you wanted to explore that, so we would know that more. But the going from Lapidus's iconic geometric shapes, finding that organic link, and then going into this biomimicry that you did, and then following it up with these tessellation studies, or what you call the Verona, I thought that was very nice. I thought that the brown part of your model, the canvas part, and then the black seating part almost looks like scaled up versions of the granite that is there. So I actually did feel like it did hit the base really well. Was that part of your thinking on that? Was that they are sort of a the granite is a tessellation itself. And so what you've done is instead of going from the organic, you've gone from the man-made placement of these granite tiles and created a larger scale tessellation for your base. Is that right?
That's correct, Deborah, actually. Thank you for pointing that out. I meant to mention that. The ground is
Okay, very good. No, I'm sorry. Thank you for that. And then I just wanted to quickly say that the this new glass that you're using is phenomenal, and it would definitely replace that crazy Morris piece that they have there, which is so awful and doesn't do any justice to him at all. So I like the placement of it. I like the sighting of it on the ground, and I like the shape of it. Again, I'm wondering, are you making that a roof, or are you showing that as having light coming through the top as well? I'm just curious as to your take on that.
Well, I wasn't necessarily making it like for light to come through, but yeah, I guess with the arrangement that it has, I think it could be feasible. I don't know.
I just wasn't sure. You had that detail in one of the other little drawings, and I wasn't sure if that was in the final tessellation that you're offering. I couldn't tell whether or not there were gaps in it to allow light to come through the top. So I guess I was just asking for that clarification.
Yeah, no, it's I don't think it's there, but yeah, another
All right,
thing
thank you.
Yeah, no, it's all right. Sorry. We're good.
No, go
Thank
ahead.
you.
What else did you want to say?
No, it's just looking at the slides. I don't know if you can appreciate the plexiglass I use for the model, because that's where the screens would go. I just wanted to point that out. That's it.
Oh, yes, I see that. I think that's fabulous. And you also show that in one of your drawings by putting an image of is that Einstein going into a panel? I don't know who he is, but it's some man going into a panel. So I thought the flow of people through it, the attractiveness of this particular project, it draws people to it. It's very delightful. I think using the thin columns to band the plexiglass is very much in the language of Lapidus, who called those things bean poles. So I think you've done a great job of incorporating the fun spirit of Lapidus into a project. So thank you. You've deconstructed him really well.
Thank you, Deborah. That means a lot. Thank you so much, everyone.
We're going to move ahead to Amelia.
Hi, I'm Amelia. This is my pop-up that's on Lincoln Road. It was inspired by Morris Lapidus, and I'm celebrating like his design principles of light, structure, graphics, and path. These are my research papers. For the one on the left, this was one where we just focused on Lapidus, and we would just like zoom in onto certain pieces. And then the one on the right, I looked at like the path, the nodes, the edges. I really researched those. And I loved his graphics because I loved, like I see a lot of stripes in his work. So I wanted to emulate that like in my work. So then when we go, oh, this is my model. So yeah, when we go to my concepts, we see a lot of stripes, a lot of graphics. And I was really stuck on the first idea that I did. And then I was like, no, I can't like finish on that. So I kept on going and I went to the last idea, which was like a curved stainless steel panel. And then there were etchings of people on there interacting just like you would do at Lincoln Road. And then I picked that idea and I just further developed it.
and I put the graphics into it with stripes. I made it more of like a room. And I kept the etchings of the people because I thought that that was a really cool idea. I wanted to be almost as if when you're there, the stainless steel would reflect the buildings behind you, because this would be on 1100 block. So it would be on Alton Road, which is supposed to be the entrance, but it's not really. So I thought that this would bring people over. So it would reflect the buildings and yourself. And then you would see these people walking with you, these really abstract people. They look almost like mannequins. That's where I got my inspiration from. So then considering that I wanted the people to be with you, I thought it'd be cool if I could get panels and put them around the block, almost like leading you like a path to the pop-up. So that's the one that you see on the bottom right. This is the site plan on the left, and then the one on the right is they are my, oh, this one, sorry. And these are my orthographics, my elevations. For the inside, these are the elevations on the left, and then the ones on the right are the sections, so you would cut it in half. I wanted the room to have a bunch of entrances, so you didn't have to walk in from a certain direction. You could be anywhere and still go inside of it, which you'll see in the next slide. So yeah, these are my roof and floor plans. I wanted the center to have like different level boxes that had models of the Follies or models of any of his works on top. And then this wall over here had like shelves with models that the students made, my colleagues. And this right here is a bench for people to sit on outside. This is my exploded econometric. And then this is my model. So here you can really see the materials, and I really wanted to make the like the inside walls like wooden I don't know, beams, not beams, rows, because when the sun would shine through, it would put a shadow onto the floor that would look the same as it does on all the other blocks. So I put that in for like his light principle. And then you can see the stainless steel. It's just painted cardboard, and you can see the etchings of the people on it. And I wanted to have for it to have like a floating roof. So there would be like lights, like LED lights going around the roof. And that is my project.
I think overall, I enjoy this project, even in its just simplicity, because even though it is, I can tell that you put a lot of thought into it with your intention of design. As far as, but my only like gripe with your presentation, I feel like everything is executed so beautifully, and then your final drawings, especially the orthographics, just aren't, maybe it's the scanning, or I'm not sure what it is, but I like you have a beautiful exploded axo, a lot of interior perspectives, but then a couple of the drawings I feel like could be enhanced, but I think already they're at a good level. I think it's just a matter of elevating them. And as far as the materiality, and you greatly intrigued me with like this kind of sculptural element, which I think is really cool. I just think in the final model, the paint doesn't really read, especially on screen. It could be in real life. You could use like, there's like mirrored acrylic or out there, like, especially since you have such a stark change in material, I think it would be to your benefit to maybe just replace them with something else that's much more reflective, especially that you were talking about the interaction. But I think overall it's really beautiful.
Thank you.
So I'm here. I don't know that Shelby's there, but So I agree with colleague that the drawings are nice and that the process is there and you can see where you went from start to finish and deriving this with the slatting of the wood. I'm thinking that's wood paneling. So I have to beg the question, is this, you're showing a metaphoric metaverse about shopping being cattle prodding and cattle herding, or is there a metaverse behind what you're doing, which is sort of like consumer, you're making people watch themselves as they're consuming in these mirrors? Is there some tongue-in-cheek going on here? Are you leading people into like this, come and let you can watch yourself consume? So that was sort of the idea, is that if these stainless things were actually like mirrors and people are watching themselves shop and then watching themselves sit and stand, these mirrored boxes actually become almost a parody of shopping itself and a statement about consumerism. And so I wasn't sure if it was a sculpture, is yes, but architecture and sculpture can be the same. And it could have had also this function to be like the big black dog that's at the front of the Met, or it could have been like the consumerism box where you walk in to watch yourself consume. And it's a very, that is kind of an interesting and punk thing. And then with it looking slatted like that, it's almost like the cattle herding of cattle through a box, which shows you what you look like when you're shopping. So it's kind of there's a metaverse going on that I'm putting on it because I see the brown slatting and I come from a farm area and I can see fencing that looks exactly like this. And you're not smiling, I can't see your mask. I don't even know if you had any of that in your head when you did this, but it's actually that part of it I can live with if you didn't have it. And if you didn't have it, then I think it's okay too, but it's more like a changing room at a beach. It looks more like just the changing room at a beach where you just walk in and out of it. And I understand that. But if you are playing with this meta concept, it'd be kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I see these changing stalls like that at every beach. So I'm wondering if you're like putting a beach stall at the other end of the beach and you're trying to play with Lincoln Road has a beach end and you're not at the beach end. So you're going to remind people that there's a changing booth at the end for them to get to, right? And this is sort of like, so if you had told me that everybody was in bikinis or bathing suits, I would have even thought that was funnier, because it's sort of like, as you're shopping, when you get to the very end, you'll get to change your clothes and hit the ocean. I'm not sure where you're going with that, but anyway, those were some thoughts I had. And thank you for Amelia for letting me have some fun with it.
Yeah, no problem.
And did you think of any of that kind of stuff while you were thinking?
Not at all. I thought of the shack and I was like, oh, it does look very beachy, but nothing about the cattle or the shopping, like consumerism, not at all. But I think that that's a really smart idea, and I feel like it elevates it even though I wasn't even thinking about it. Like, yeah.
Well, I think you were really thinking about people. And when you really think about people, in the end, you put people front and center, square and center with themselves. And it just shows where you start is where you end. And you really did start with people and you ended with people. And actually people seeing themselves looking at displays and shopping was very keen, I thought. Anyway, so thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
I just hope you liked it. I hope you didn't, I didn't insult you.
No, you didn't. I thought it was super funny. I could see that now, like when I look at it. So yeah, thank you.
Ira? I think we have a new juror who's arrived, so Daniel is here to say hello, and feel free to jump in at any time.
Yeah, got it. Hey, everyone.
Hi, my name is Jaira, and this is the Geo, which is a pop-up celebrating Lapidus.
Wait 1 second, let me get the screen a little bit.
So it's a pop-up celebrating Lapidus, and I was inspired by the use of geometric shapes that Lapidus has in his work. This is my research. So the top left drawings were the basic foundation of this project. I was just drawing the volleys that he created and trying to get inspiration from them. And the right drawings were just to get a better understanding of the vocabulary, such as like notes, pacts, districts, and landmarks. This is also another part of my research where I show the measurements and like the folly that I was studying at the time. So this is the folly that I studied. It was one big folly, but they had 3 little follies inside it. These are my concept sketches. So the one on the top left corner is the very first concepts I started out. I was thinking of it as like a bus stop or like a shop at first, but then I thought of it as more as like a tiny version of like Lapidus's structures. And I was really interested in the shape of a trapezoid. So as you can see, I tried incorporating that in these drawings. In these drawings, I was actually inspired by my hair clip at a time. So this is my analysis of the hair clip, but that idea was never pulled through. And this is like the foundation of like my model now. This is my abstract model where I played with how I wanted my model to look like, the final one. And I did think of the interior, but I didn't fully pull through in this idea because it was going to be really big. This is my site plan, elevations, roof plan, and section. So this drawing was originally where I was going to put it, which was in the side of Starbucks on Pennsylvania Avenue. But I decided not to put it there. Well, I did, but I decided not to put it here specifically because on the other side of the road, it was emergency vehicles. They would be parking there, so I didn't want to block them. So instead, I chose to put it on the other side where the H&M is, which used to be the Lincoln Theater. These are my axonometric and exploded axonometric and perspective drawings. So as you can see in these drawings, they're really detailed because this is when I started planning out the materials I wanted to make it out of. So I wanted to make it out of safely wood and glass. And the plants up here would have cast iron plants, the devil's ivy, and the Swiss cheese plants. I thought of those plants just because Miami's weather is really weird and no one would want to be taking care of the plants. So these 3 plants would be really easy to take care of. And I have 4 exploded axonometrics because I wanted to showcase each part of the model that I created and how it connects. This is my final model. I used moss as a substitute instead of using real plants or just like getting grass out. And this is my final board composition. Yeah. You guys have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I think overall, I think you have a very clean hand with your model making and your drawing. However, there's little blips, I feel, in your presentation that don't do that justice. So for example, some of like the hands could have been done better, or some of the initial other drawings just could have been as clean as your final ones. And I think your final ones are really beautiful, especially those axos and I feel like you really thought about your final. However, I am kind of missing the link of the evolution of it. Maybe I missed something, or I feel like as a final, it is pretty well executed. However, I just would like to know more of the intention, because you mentioned the trapezoidal shapes, but is it just because it was something that you noticed in his work, or is it something that like I'm confused as why, like, not that it's bad, that it's interesting, it is a very interesting shape, but I would just like to see through your drawings and through your presentation why exactly that specific one stood out. And just a thing with like the final model is that, I mean, me personally, I would not use the moss. I would have modeled plants, like it could be really simple, like paper, like there's different ways of doing it, but like the mentality after that is like your chipboard is a representation of your material. Why does the plant get to be more accurately represented than the actual thing? So that's just something to keep in mind. It's easily to be replaced, but I do think that in its simple design, it's well executed.
I guess.
I'm sorry, you cut off. And is there anything muted?
Okay, Shelby, did you want to say something?
No, not really. I was just gonna let Daniel speak. I know he just came.
Okay, Dan, do you want to speak?
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. Overall, very like how I'm really reiterating a lot of what Michelle said, but really, you really do have a clean hand. I've seen your work before. I know how your sort of workflow. A couple of things. I feel the end model itself feels a little bit I would have explored using different material, especially for the slatting and the supports of it. The fact that everything is the same thickness kind of confuses me a bit as to what the dominance of the structures, especially so how in the side profile you have like the boldening of the perimeter. I almost would have liked to see this maybe be out of wood. As you'd mentioned, that's kind of the material you're looking for too. Wood itself isn't ever that thin. Yeah, in fact, like as I'm looking more at the model, to me, I feel like you could have more accurately represented it rather than just having sort of three planes and cutting out the slots from each one of them. I would have liked seeing how the pieces actually come together a bit more. And that way, maybe you could have explored a different method of building it when you're building the model. Yeah, that's just the main point that I saw.
Thank you.
Myself. Hi guys. So if you go back to wherever you want to go back to on the boards, there you are. Okay, good. I wanted to say, I think maybe you absorbed a lot of the lectures and the discussions that we had, because one of the missing storylines that you're not getting, but you could have said, is that when you got to your hair clip, Mr. Lapidus's signature for himself was a bow tie. And if you go through any of his architecture, you find his bow tie everywhere. It's really funny. And so you do see these bow ties coming up and you don't know where, but they're in the floor at the Fontainebleau. They're on the edges of his concrete panels that hold curtain walls. I mean, he uses his little bow tie as a clip in a lot of his architecture. And I think we actually did mention that his symbol for himself was the bow tie. Also, I wanted to mention that the particular shape that you picked, which is the very linear one, I picked that same shape when I wanted to do a study for a t-shirt, because what I found most interesting is that when you walked under it, never were any of those squares ever the same shape. They were all trapezoidal. And I thought that's really funny because it's where form defies logic. You know it's square, but you're walking under it, and every single step you take, it turns into a trapezoid. So I'm giving you, Zara, the benefit of the doubt that you might have been experiencing what I experienced, which was this whole trapezoidal phenomenon walking underneath that particular structure, which is very interesting. So I didn't reject that. Also, earlier when you said that there was one big part and three little parts, I thought very interestingly, when you did finish your final project, you gave us one big part with three little parts. So in a way, the that dictum or that understanding that you had of the original intent of Lapidus, one really big thing with three parts, came through in the way that you even expressed your final project. So I do find that even if you're not able to speak about it, or you didn't know exactly where you made those cognitive jumps, if you analyzed yourself a little bit more, and if you had maybe asked or had talked a little bit more about Lapidus's signature bow tie, it might have been an aha moment. You might have said, oh, I get it. That's why I'm there. You know, and that would have resonated with a lot more spirit maybe. But in the meantime, it's subtly there anyway, because you really studied him and you really studied this piece. And that's what it shows to me. And also, I know, because I've done a lot of as-built drawings back in the day before you had electronic measuring things, the fact that you did a measured drawing of his little thing, that is taking a lot of time and that takes a lot of work, and they don't look pretty, those drawings, ever. They never look pretty. And I've done a lot of nightclubs and I've had to walk through guana and warehouses and crazy things. That drawing is absolutely acceptable as a geometric study of relationships of parts in architecture, which is a very basic thing that has to be understood. And sometimes doing a very dirty drawing like that measured is very good. So I think the fact that you measured Lapidus, that you found his bow tie mysteriously kind of in your hair clip, but you found it, and you did a kit of three parts, one big and three little. I think you did it, kind of. And thank you.
Thank you.
You'll wait for that. Uh-oh. Just give us a second. We have a little technical glitch. We're ready. Okay. You're going to move it with that. Yes, correct. Hi, everyone.
Can you hear me? Yeah. All right. My name is Sebastian Carrera, and I'm here to present my pop-up called Infinity. It's a I based this solely off Lapidus's flow. What is it like? Design in a way, and it's both a two-in-one. It's a film place and a food place, but I'll get on that like later. So, oh wait, is it? Sorry. So as with every single great architecture design, you first need to do research. So, using my iPad and my laptop, I went through Google Earth and I searched up Lincoln Road, and I just looked at his structures using the 3D, the built-in 3D, I guess software you would say, which could help you I guess see it more than you can see it in real life. And yeah, that's really stupid. So here I got my I don't actually know what this structure is called, but I do know that on each corner here there's trees on it, but I really don't know what's called. But this model helped me hone in my Rhino like skills, I guess, and me building scale. I scaled it based on how big it was inside the in real life, but I forgot how tall it how big it is, so I'm sorry about that. So I was kind of stumped for a while with this. I didn't know what I was gonna do for my pop-up, but Deborah came here and she started explaining how the different types of ways that Lapidus used his structures to bring people together, right? And so I was just thinking to myself, what's the best way to bring people together? Or what is the most popular way of people getting together? So I said to myself, well, personally, I like eating with my family, and that helps me bond with them. But I also like going to the movie theaters, And so I combined both of those into a single structure using basically using his flow. As you can see, it's an infinity sign, which is the like the most asymmetrical symbol out there. And so I wanted people to know more about Lapidus using this as well. So I based the foods of the restaurant off his actual structures. So for example, here it's the cufflink that he has, and it's a shrimp cocktail, right? Or it's nachos, but it's the circle fountain he always has there. Or the amphitheater he has, and it's a cake. And so that's what I basically, this is how, sorry, I was on a roll. Sorry. And so just to give you like a visual example of what else I was gonna do with this is here, sorry for the rudimentary, I guess, form of showing you this, but if you ever went to like a fast food restaurant, they have this paper to not dirty the trays that you have, right? And so whenever you bought a food from this restaurant, you would get a small little description of the actual design. So here is the cufflink, and I just put in a little thing from the New York Times about the cufflink design. And for the movie part, I would have a playlist of videos based on Lapidus. Like, if you ever went to the Kennedy Space Center, there is this really beautiful room. I think I'm biased because I really like NASA, but it's this like round place, and they just have projectors filled with just videos on this. So that's why I based this on. And so I would have it on the 1100 block, which if you kind of see here, it's kind of like a really small spec. I can zoom in if you, nah, it's really difficult, sorry. And he has this infinity sign there, and I'll have it right next to it with the other, I guess, flowing structures with it. And here is the exploded axonometric with the roof cut off. You can see this thing here, that's the vestibule, which separates the restaurant from the theater. So there's not that much noise when you go and enter the theater, right? And with the model I made in Rhino, I tried to I didn't make a detailed interior, but I made it so you can at least see where I'm going with this. And outside here, if you didn't want to just go in the theater and you just want to hang out with your family or with whoever, there's a bunch of places to sit and eat. And here are some other pictures of the model. This is the restaurant place. It's not that detailed, like I said, but it's like a circular restaurant. And this is the interior, looking inside the theater part. And this is my final work.
Hey, Sebastian, I can really appreciate that you're going into Rhino pretty early on in your education. And it's a good thing to practice software, but I feel like there's a lot that the design could, there were a lot of interesting concepts that you brought up, but I know kind of fell through from it. To me, when I think of the word infinity, I think of this idea of continuity and circulation within the building. And since the exterior was kind of blocking it, I was hopeful that maybe you had some sort of circulatory interior, but then like looking at it, it's cut off by a lot of walls. And so that kind of brought me down a bit. And in fact, the idea of this exterior wall as well, I feel like it doesn't really benefit the social gathering and restaurant aspect of the design that you want either. It sort of funnels in everybody into that one area, and at the same time, Lincoln Road is sort of a tourist attraction, right? Like I think that people while eating would want to see outside. I feel like if you had maybe more of an open floor plan, maybe even omit the walls entirely, you could have it sort of be like a suspended roof over seating and dining areas. I feel like that could have been a direction that you could have taken, and it could have even lended itself a bit more to sort of the pavilion folly structures that I've seen of Lapidus. I do like the idea of food as a tool to gather people. Like you say food, I'm probably always already there. It is a way to, like I say, gather people, but yeah, in the end, I feel like parts of those concepts with the actual design kind of clash. There's a lot of subtle, interesting geometric things happening as well. So I'll just encourage you to, if you were to revisit this project, to go back into the design and really like think about what you want to do and have everything work more seamlessly together.
Yeah, you're totally right. Never thought about that.
Yeah, I think the going off what Daniel said, I think the overall concept of gathering is not bad. It's smart. However, and like with the execution, just with Daniel said, and I think as far as like you're good at drawing, I can see that from the site plan. However, I would love to see that more elaborated, especially in your research and development, just because I feel like you started with a Rhino model and you ended with a Rhino model, which Rhino is one step in a really long step of a really long process of climbing this ladder to a final destination. So I think especially when Daniel was talking about like the circulation aspect, and I feel like these nuances in the design could have been more elaborated if you took those extra steps.
I have a question on what the things on the exterior are. Like, is that a bar, like seating? Like, what are those meant to be?
Talking about these ones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like an extra seating place if you didn't want to stay for the theater place, because I didn't add it in the Rhino, but there's supposed to be seating area here. I'm sorry about that.
Okay. I think just working with scale, because they look like really big compared to the people that are like entering the building. So scale with the building, and then like if it's seating, the table shouldn't be like taller than the person. And then yeah, and then for the sketches and stuff, just scanning them better. I don't know where you drew them, like what paper you use, but when you get a chance to use a better scanner, then yeah, I would just do that.
Okay, so Sebastian, I'll take it to the next level. You're working on the oval, and then you move into 1100 block and you see those ovid type shapes that Herzog and Demeron have done for their swamps, a reenactment of the original Miami Beach. And you also see that shape, the infinity shape that was done by the artist. So I get where you're pulling the infinity idea. And I also understand food. Mr. Lapidus, when he wrote his book, Too Much Is Never Enough, the editor actually named it that after Lapidus described, you like ice cream, have one scoop, have two, have three, too much is never enough. So his theories have been jokingly always associated with food, and with too much is never enough, particularly of ice cream. So what I thought was interesting was on the oval, you see that he had those 4 breakout little bubbles on the side. I see the interior of your space not as food, literal food, but food for thought. And we have display areas that you've tried to set up, but I would have seen a long contiguous a flowing contiguous display space along the edges, just like you would have at Nassau, and people would be getting food for thought instead of getting real food. And they have these panels that are available now, where if you in some social settings, where if your glass screen is on the table and you put your cup down, it actually brings you into a social media position. So you could actually be learning while you're sitting there, and the tabletop would be informing you of different social medias, and you could be opening up layers into Lapidus as food for thought concept. So I would have gotten rid of all the interior walls, put in a ring of, the way that they do at NASA, the way they show all those things about the astronauts on the edges of the walls, and you walk through, you could have a big ice cream cone in the center, and I would not care. That would be fine with me. So I see that the gathering and the coming through with the food for thought, not visual, not actual literal food, but food on his information kiosks about Lapidus as your inspiration, and people eating thoughts would be fine. And then the exterior can be black and white stripes, so you know it's about Lapidus. So that's my take on how I would say where you started with the food is fun, and I don't think it's wrong. But trying to contain that into a restaurant, I think is not correct. But turning it more into an information, the interior to be an information kiosk was kind of, for me, where you made a mistake. Does that resonate, Sebastian? Did you get that? I mean,
I got it. Thank you.
okay, thank you.
I know we haven't had a break. I just wanted to let the jurors and the students know that we're running a little behind. I thought we would finish by 11:15. It'll probably be more like 11:30 or even like 11:40. So if you can stay, I really appreciate it, but we understand if you have other things to do. Okay. Now we'll move on to
Eric, how many more are there?
there's 4 more.
Okay, thank you.
I can show it from now. Hi, my name is Haya, and here's my pop-up that was inspired by Lapidus. Oops.
Still loading. There you go.
Okay. So I started off by researching all the follies to really take inspiration from his style, how he used like light, shadow, angles, and like really trying to mimic his work into my work when I would get further in the process. So we started off by making a little folly just to like kind of understand his concept. And this is the one that I chose to make. And then we moved on to starting our concept designs, concept sketches, where we basically thought of ideas. I really liked my first idea. I didn't feel like I had to make more than one. So I started by making the little draft model, which I started here. And for the design, I decided to kind of use it as a way to educate people on his kind of like follies. So I made a little room, which was held up by this like structure, which I wanted to make out of concrete. But then I was thinking about it and I was like, this doesn't really seem convenient since it's temporary, like you have to take it out of Lincoln Road once it's put in. So I decided to make it out of metal. So then I started designing like every aspect of it and showing visually how I would make it. So like how to make every single piece in it and how I would use each space. So for these little like columns that would hold up the roof, I decided to add screens, which would give you information on the follies that would be displayed in the little room that would hang down from the wall right here. And then here's perspective drawings and all the little pieces spread out. Here's my final model. I did make a few adjustments, which can be seen at the bottom here. I made it a lot smaller. I made the room a lot bigger so that it could be more interactive. I couldn't include the screens into the actual model itself because it was too delicate. Like I felt like it was going to break. But at a bigger scale, it would obviously be much easier to do. And here is the final side.
Aya, what are the shapes in the middle of the room again? Could you elaborate that again?
They're just little like stands so you can put like the follies on it. So like the screens that would be put into here would explain a lot about Lapidus and like his process of designing Lincoln Road. And then in the room, there would be these like columns or like stands to place mini follies onto so that you could like look around and like really analyze and compare.
Like models of follies.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
Michelle, are you going to say something?
Oh, no, you can go ahead before me. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay, great. I really appreciate how much you studied Lapidus, and I'm sure that, you know, if you'd given more time, the model would have been more perfect. It was a long process of trying to understand, I guess, is edges and geometry. What I find interesting about you is that you've also taken from him that it's a system, and he was a systems guy. And so this kit of parts would have really pleased him because he would see things as a part of a system. And so I think that you've taken his ideas and you've kind of done something which a lot of people don't do. You've made him a Tinker Toy set, right? So that's kind of nice. And he would have liked that. The gaming aspect of Lapidus was always there. You didn't say whether or not this could be converted into 4 or 5 different looks and feels like a Tinker Toy set. But when I saw it, I began thinking that the concept of having it be able to be an interchangeable kit of parts where the roof can basically be held up by the little room and by whatever foundation it's on, and that the panels could be shifted around and moved so that during the day or during events, this thing could have a kinetic relationship to light, even if they tilt, pivot, or move. I wanted to see something kinetic happening within your kit of parts. And I wanted to see the ceiling have some connection with the light above it, so that maybe there could have been penetrations inside of that. If you weren't afraid about things getting wet, you could find relevant places. But I felt that the idea of giving those, I guess you would say, an homage room to Lapidus that has these pedestals on it is sort of funny because he would never have seen himself with pedestaled rooms, but that's okay. But if they had been lucite, I would have got it. Or if they'd had fish in them, I would have gotten it. You know, if you could have been a little aquariums that are floating and fish are inside of it, if it could have been an organic element inside and not just a solid thing. Again, what I see happening in your event here and in your interpretation is this kit of parts, this mobility, and I would have seen a fish tank just as easily as one of those, and you put a folly on top of a fish tank. That would be very funny. It would sort of express the fact that we are an island, we are floating with water all around us, and it sort of is like it brings the fish context back to where we really are. So I find all of it could be really fun. So again, more kinetic and more daring in the way that you apply the ideas would have been very great. But just breaking him down into a system, I think, is amazing. And I appreciate the effort to do that. That takes a lot of work. And thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
I think just little things. It's not bad that you use tape for your models, but I think when like the time comes to, because models are meant to be played around with, it's totally fine to do that initially, but once it's cleaner, especially for presentation, just to use white glue. And as far as with the kit of parts thing, I think that was clever. And I think would have elevated it more would be probably like an axo diagram close-up of like how one piece met another, or something really, again, like kinetic and really solidifying like this whole idea of construction.
I wanted to comment or ask somebody, excuse me, if whether or not y'all have ever spray painted craft paper white. Do y'all do that, or did you ever do that? I used to back in the day, years ago, when we couldn't finish models on time, we would spray paint everything and give it a color. I mean, I remember back in the day, you know, this is 1977, ladies. This is a long time ago. But anyway, we used to just spray paint everything. If we didn't have time to finish it completely, we got out a can of spray paint. Okay.
Yeah. Anything else? Thank you.
Eric, that's made me old school, really old school. And I love it.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that.
All right, good morning, jurors. Good to see some familiar faces. and Deborah. This is my pop-up celebrating Lapidus. I called it Floating Lamps, and I'll get to that soon. But pretty much this concept is meant to be placed on the 1100 block of Lincoln Road. And I focus on light, geometry, flow, all the design principles that the Lapidus wanted him, like he wanted to use in his designs and all his qualities as well. So this is my research. With the first one to the left here, I explored the shapes, angles. I also wanted to experiment with markers and shading as well, because this is a fun thing that I like to do when I like blending them, seeing how light plays with the shape, and then eventually bringing it over to the research for the one on the right. That's when we started exploring the terms like nodes and graphics, all these structures. They all play a role, and that's pretty much just to allow free-flowing movement of the people and interaction. And then here I chose the zigzag folly. I found this one interesting because I remember this one time Deborah came and she started talking about this one specifically, how it was meant to display artwork, I imagine, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Okay, so that I found that interesting, and how there's so many entryways just to get in. And then I eventually came up with that T-shaped design of the detail. This will later influence my brainstorming process of how I drew these 6 images here in the middle, and then eventually just came up with this one. It was like this one class that I just thought of ceiling lamps and started looking at modernistic interior designs. So I just thought, why not flip this little lamp upside down? And so I wanted to somehow capture light and kind of create this moth effect of like dragging people to my design. I started exploring Philippe Stark. He is a man who designed all these types of appliances and always played with like oversized lamps, and I found that pretty interesting in how I could use that in my design. And then there was this pop-up going on in Korea as well, that they were releasing a new strand of clothing for the, I imagine it's the winter clothing line, and it's for the designer brand Burberry. And I realized that they were using sheet metal with reflective properties to reflect the surrounding topography. So I wanted to use that as well as for the roof, and kind of like show how people, like when they look at the roof, they just see themselves, like the reflection, and how Lapidus's work reflects on their design.
If you want to point, you have to point there.
Oh. Here, I was exploring the shapes. I started drawing multiple sketches to eventually come up with this Mobius design of like how I can like offset the shapes. At first, I started off with just 3 circles, and eventually I thought, why not pull out another one and just rotate it and just play around with the shape. Came up with this abstract model to eventually later on split the bottom so that there's more free-flowing space for the people to move around and interact. Now, when it came time with the plan, I was also inspired by the surrounding scape, as I mentioned at the start. I like how the designers here really focus on the organic flow of this whole area of between Alton Road and Lenox Avenue, and how it's so easy to just get lost with all this vegetation going on. It's very beautiful, and especially at night. And so the design of this is like very free flowing, that you could just easily interact, and you could see it like from a distance, just approaching. And here are my plans: site plan, roof plan, and a floor plan with notes on the side, annotating. Yeah, I'm gonna do a section, an A section here, and this would be the columns, additional seating, and then projections that would show Lapidus himself and his work. Here are my elevations. Yeah, the scale is pretty big when you see this from far and pretty close up. And another thing, I really focused on line weight. I found that really important too, to show that illusion of depth, what's close and what's not. And then here, my section AA. Here I explain everything, all the steps, the construction process. I plan on using wooden joints here. Here I'm going to use like a surround sound invisible speaker that blends with the surrounding scape. Projector screen, steel skeletal framing, and then the LED lights. There's like this little elevated platform here to make it look like the lamp is kind of like floating. Here are my exploded axle and my perspective view. And then here is my model. The model is pretty tricky when it came time to doing the columns, but I figured out a creative way of just wetting them a bit and just slightly moving them to a point that it doesn't really affect the design of it, or like the look of it, the aesthetics. And so human scale is very important, of course. And also I did like an aerial view and an eye level view of the model. Oh yeah, and of course I forgot to mention, I did Rhino as well. Oh, sorry. Okay, they're saying that we're not. Sorry about that. So yeah, I also experimented with Rhino as well. You can see this on computer and also explore my techniques as well. And here's my final board composition.
Yeah, Norman, I really enjoyed the presentation. And it was really grounded and based on sort of periodic steps the entire time. From the original inspiration to sort of the concept of light as a source of gathering as well. It was very well thought out, very well put together. And the result was, I think, a subliminally beautiful result. A couple of things to note. I do think the circulatory space in the middle is a little bit close. If you were to have people sit all the way, I feel like their legs might actually cut off the circulation. So if you were to redesign, just think about the movement of people as well while people are sitting down in those spots. I believe that it is seating, right?
Yeah.
The circles are, yeah. So do think about that. And maybe, and at the same time, then you mentioned how you would also have projectors on top of this. I don't know if you represented it, like if the projections were on top of the people or maybe they were where the people sat. Think about how to organize that and to illustrate that also in your drawings. I do like the placement of the 6 circles on the roof, but there's something I feel like you could have experimented a little bit more with how everything came together rather than just sort of 2 layers of circles juxtaposed on top of each other. Maybe they could have been more melded together or some sort of something to connect those 2 elements before a bit more. Just because there's the sort of concave and convex relationships between those 2 elements. But overall, I really do like I really do like the design. It has sort of the sense of weightlessness with some really methodic shrinking of where supports meet. And I feel like it really does fit in the context of Lincoln Road. So well done. Thank you.
Overall, the project is really good. Going off what Daniel said with the circles, them being flat can create other issues. I feel like if you experiment with like how to maybe angle them a little bit, it could also add like how interesting it'll look from different angles as well. And then I don't know, the column, like, I don't know if I feel like you could do something else with it. It feels kind of like rigid compared to the other circles, or like if it was just like connecting them. But I feel like it, like there's another way that you can connect to it that would flow more with the circles. But I like your use of human scale in your model, and the section was a really nice drawing as well, how you labeled everything. Very easy to read for when you use it in your portfolio. It'll look really nice. So overall, good job on your work.
Yeah, really quick. I really like that detail section. I think gives such a clear cut view of the construction and everything and your thought about it. One thing I would like to note though is your research and development is so beautiful. I feel like the final drawings don't give that justice. So whether it's through color or through more context, because you draw a lot of like the foliage and everything like that, could probably enhance it even better and really show the relationship between, like, I feel like the composition makes a lot of sense. I would like to see it more shown in especially like 3D and the elevations.
Really quick, just for organization as well for the final board, when you do present this at portfolio day and in your portfolio, hopefully, please don't stretch the images. It's okay to have white space in the middle, in between, that actually allows the drawings to breathe a bit more. But actually warping the images is not really good for the drawing itself.
I guess I wanted to just speak to the concepts because I thought the research was good. The drawings are great. The representation could have some changes in my opinion, but overall very good. The start to finish shows a sequential flow in the design, which is very, very strong. So that's amazingly strong for somebody to be able to lock into an idea and then follow it with that kind of a lockdown on the sequence is amazing. And I wanted to mention that you inherited some of Lapidus's ideas, which I wanted to be thankful for, that he did have that moth concept or that moth effect, which is people are attracted to light. He also did a lot of things with changing of scales at the Eden Rock.
he used a very tiny leaf pattern and made it into a huge floor pattern that's 50 feet large. And everybody wondered why he used the agapanthus for a floor pattern. And there was sort of the beginning of postmodernism when he began playing and shifting scales like that. So it's nice to see you also flipping, changing, and shrinking and enlarging scales. And Philippe loved Lapidus, and I think Philippe is a great guy to look at. The idea though that you have on the column, which is the most, is that Lapidus was all about anti-gravity. He didn't want his columns to look like they were weighted down, so he never let them touch the ceiling. He would always put light there. So the fact that you've incorporated a light ring at the top of it is so germane to Lapidus that it's almost like, okay, you really got it. Because what he was trying to do was make it never look like it was that heavy, like this big massive building is underneath all these columns. So he would always over engage the columns, make them bigger. He would put a light separation between the ceiling. And I know I'm boring people, but anyway, Lapidus, probably the only difference in that column from one of the ones that he's done is that he would have not engaged the seating. He would have also had a gap there and allowed the seat to also float. So in also talking about the roof, he might have taken those planes that you have, the different shapes of the planes, and might have lifted them also so that they all look like it was all lifting. So that is kind of, if you want to keep in that conversation about Lapidus, he did that. If you look at Frank Lloyd Wright at the Larkin building, he used fluted columns and engaged circle elements in the ceiling, which were fabulous. And you might look at the Larkin building just for another solution for how you might have done that ceiling, or that roof ceiling idea. And that Larkin building no longer exists, but it was one of Frank Lloyd Wright's most beautiful, beautiful buildings. So you're in a good league of people.
Thank you.
Oh, if you guys are using Rhino, by the way, you should look at the Arctic view as a way to, yeah, Michelle knows what I'm talking about, to present some of your images. It's, yeah, just experiment with that.
Thank you so much.
Be
guys.
careful.
Deborah, you just muted yourself for that.
Yeah, finish your thought, Deb.
Daniel, the Arctic view can look very cold in Miami. I mean, it's you have to Arctic is too much fun. I love it, but it's also you have to be very, very careful. I just went to a presentation where it bombed the presentation because it was too cold. So it has to be used sparingly.
Hello, my name is Emma Shedra, and I'm going to be presenting to you about the pop-up shop that I made celebrating Morris Lapidus. And so I'm going to start with like the research that I did for it. Like the first one is mostly focused on the follies, while the second one is focused on the definitions and terms. And in these drawings, I wanted to bring emphasis to stuff that I found especially interesting, or stuff I wanted to incorporate later in my concept, which were the black and white stripes and the like something like that feels like a plant, and the pink that is all over Lincoln Road. Like that pink just stands out to me a lot because you see it a lot there. And then this is this is the folly that I chose to do, and the little section of it as well, to study the shape and how it compares to the size of other things in the environment, and get a feel for it. After that, I came up with 6 concepts at the beginning with the top drawing over here. And I played with like stuff like water, for example, like through water bubbles to show like the rhythm and all that stuff. And other ones, I used the bow tie as graphics, or I used waves as to show like, you know, the curvature, but also emphasize that Miami Beach has a beach nearby. But the one that I ended up focusing on was this one over here. And I bring it down over here to the second drawing. where I split it because it was way too large compared to 15 feet by 15 feet by 15 feet. So I scaled it down and I tested it out with like having like this wall that these three walls that essentially become the roof. And I just.
Good morning, teachers, students, and staff. Just a couple important lunchtime announcements. Teachers, this is a reminder, we have an ESAC meeting with Ms. McKinley in her classroom during lunch. Also, faculty and staff, we sent an email to everyone. We have special visitors on our campus during B6 at 1 p.m. today. Superintendent Alberto Carvalho and visual artist Romero Brito will be visiting Dash. They'll be meeting in the multi-purpose room with the B6 fine art classes from each grade level. During lunch, students, we're going to ask that you get your lunch in the kitchen and head to eat outside. We're going to ask that you not eat inside the multi-purpose room today. We also ask everyone's help keeping the campus looking its best. Students, please be careful with your lunch garbage. Please help us keep the campus looking great. Thank you, everybody. Have a great Dash lunch.
I also play around because like inside this building, there are shelves to like display items. And I played with the idea of different levels, like they're placed randomly or in the same line or just have it curved so it is all connected. And I also played with the stripes, where they could be made out of, or could they be just like glasses, transparent. And this structure I created to practice the form, to see what the form is about. And then these drawings I created so that like for the final, I'm gonna just quickly skip to the final so you can understand this one. But I made the final out of clay. I tried to smooth it out as much as possible and use paper mache and then put clay over it to try and smooth it further. Because since it's such a curved structure, the railroad board wasn't getting the effect that I was looking for. So that's why I used it. And there are three walls. This one in the back, there's three shelves that it can display stuff. Over here, this is gonna be like an interactive where there's like there would be glass panel, there would be like, you know, stuff for your arms to go into and like play with Legos to create your own follies. And then the third one, which I'm going to show you over here through the section, is this shelf for pamphlets or for other items so that someone can grab and look at it themselves while they're walking around Lincoln Road. And one thing about this structure is that I'm still working on it. It's that I'm going to be adding stripes to it to match down to the like stripes. It's going to be positioned over here, so there's going to be stripes. I want to attach them so it feels like the structure is growing out of the ground. And I'm still measuring the stripes because this block specifically, the other blocks, the stripes are evenly lined up, but this one has random measurements for the black lines and the white line. So that's what's using more. And yeah, so, and the inside, the interior, I'm gonna have a fabric that's very soft, so you could touch it. So it's a sensory experience as well. And it's going to be the paint that was on like found on so many of the blocks on Lincoln Road. So you can walk in and enjoy it. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Do I get to go first for Emma? Hi. Muted, sorry. So sorry, guys. My mouse is faster than I am. I like very much that you ended up with this pod that became this human form and this mask almost. Lapidus loved masks. And I'm seeing this almost like hands or the face of a person, and this experience on the inside of a deconstructed form of a person, almost like a meltdown when you're shopping.
A quick reminder, we will be having the multicultural meeting at 11:30 by Zoom. Thank you.
So I like the concept of it and I like the placement of it and the fact it looks like a pod within a very organic world. I would have liked to have seen a cross section through to see the other buildings and how this thing nestled in the middle. And I would love to see how the black and how the stone from the granite floor kind of or change as it goes up the side wall of this particular structure, which I love. There's a man in Paris who did something called the Mammary Building, and that sounds very funny, but it was in the 70s. It's a pop artist architect, and he did nothing but a curved building of a woman's breast and used that on the hillside of France. And you could actually look through the Orioles. I mean, it's very quite funny. And France hated it, and they almost didn't want it to get built, and they rejected it. But there was, you have precedents in this kind of style. Gaudi worked in this style. This guy in Paris worked in this style and caused a sensation. So I like that you went into total curves and that you found a plastic medium like ceramics to express your ideas, and you just kept going with the idea. I think it's fabulous. So the strength of your convictions on what you did and the excellent presentation that you've given, I think you can free yourself into a ceramics as a medium and have some fun and look into the other artists that have done like the same, the architects who have done the same.
Thank you.
It takes a free spirit to be that free and bold, and your work shows that you have that in you, so I would run for it.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Anyone else?
Like Deborah, last thing I'll say, like Deborah, I like the use of ceramics. I would change the person to be a different material just so it's easier to differentiate, like what the structure is, and then it's not the same. But overall, it's a nice, I like the idea of it being kind of like a cave. I think that works well with the assignment about having an area of conversation, because it feels like a safe place for people to go in and have that conversation. So yeah, overall nice project.
thank you.
Anyone else?
Does anyone else have a question or commentary? I don't know.
I got it.
Oh, thank you.
All right, and we have one more student. Hopefully she's, I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. And
Christina Kalajian, if you're in the building, go see Miss Melina. Christina Kalajian, if you're in the building, please go see Miss Melina.
and now we have Deborah.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm gonna screen share.
Okay, perfect.
Are you able to see that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So my name is Deborah, and for my pop-up, what I did was a geometric structure of shapes and triangles, and it's meant to complement the active movement in a space. It takes inspiration from edges, fountains, and planters found along Lincoln Road. And this is a series of observational drawings of researched follies to further understand the architect and their thought process. So the drawings to the right are the research follies and their surroundings. And the ones to the left are more close-ups, less detailed. So it's more enhances the shape and structure. This is my study model. I ended up using one of the fountains. I found it pretty interesting as from the surface, you wouldn't really be able to see the triangle and not the pentagonal shape underneath. I mean, you would be able to see the triangle, but not the pentagon shape underneath. I really liked the layering and the almost sneaky aspect of it, as you wouldn't be able to tell there's a pentagonal shape underneath unless you looked on Google Maps. This is my study model. It's pretty simple. I took the more sneaky approach kind of because you wouldn't be able unless you saw from the side perspective that the structure actually goes up in a slant. These are my concept sketches. There are a series of sketches that I did, and I wanted the structure to include a water aspect and sort of be on top of a fountain so that when it rains, it could flow through the structure similar to how a fountain works. This is my site plan. I wanted the structure to be in the middle of Pennsylvania Ave and Madryn Ave on top of a triangular fountain facing west because I thought it would fit best there, and my orthographic views to the right. This is my
For the following
axonometric
teachers,
loaded
please
perspective
join
drawings.
the multi-cultural committee Zoom meeting. Charleston, Mr. Charleston, Ms. Varela, Ms. Ariceli, Ms. Castillo, Mr. Evers, and Ms. Isakova. Thank you.
Okay, and for materials, I thought of using steel and tempered glass or lightweight concrete. And this is my final board. Any questions? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I really appreciate how in your concept sketches you included a lot of text, just so it shows that you really thought about this. And I like your approach of kind of like this cleverness and kind of this hidden aspects of his work and now yours. I'm sorry, did I catch it? Is there two separate models or there's two?
One of them is a study model and the one under it is sort of what I wanted to be as a final. It's done.
Right. Okay, I see that. Yeah, I think just buttressing this project with just enhancing your drawings, because a lot of them are faded on the page, especially like the finals. I think it could really, especially with just like the planarity of it and the stacking, I think is really interesting. I think it's just a matter of enhancing those and their readability and especially the context of it.
Right. Thank you.
There's something elegant about the concept model that you've made. It's really a very reduced form, right? It's just a one folded plane and then just a series of supports for it. And I feel like that's something that you could probably move on into your final model. Just something to work with. I would say the supports on the bottom that don't align with the ones on the upper floors, I feel like you probably could align it. It'd work better structurally and also visually without that that sort of break there.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll be contrary to that. I feel like the asymmetry and the asymmetrical placement of the columns makes it quite interesting. I take precedent from Theo van Doesburg with the Bauhaus, and Richtold, who was in the Gesteel movement in that period in the early beginnings of the Bauhaus. And I think I see a lot of that cubic feeling and everything that Lapidus was not actually. And this is, so you were trying to find the things that were there that were not. The hidden parts is that Lapidus is very much a modernist and very much a structuralist. And then on top of it, he throws a lot of curves. And you've kind of crystallized him back down to that very, very, very modern aspect that he really is, which he loved. The Tugendhat house by Mies van der Rohe. So there's precedent in what you're doing that for me speaks to the kinds of geometries that Lapidus would later put in larger buildings. And so it's sort of a mini scaled version of a bigger building is what I'm seeing. I saw some of his projects, which I know look like this at a larger scale. One of them in particular I guess you can go see it. It's in Coral Gables, and it's the Jewish, it used to be the Junior League Center, but it is a building that takes on these kind of brutal architectonics, which I think is very interesting, and you might go look at it. But I think the final is not there yet, but I think it's a great derivation to the roots of Lapidus in a modernistic manner, which he was very modern.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other comments before we wrap up? Okay, thank you, Deborah.
I'm going to be in town tomorrow. If you want to see me, I can come by I can come by the school if you want.
Okay.
I just will be there for the lecture I'm giving. I'm giving the final lecture on Sunday, and I just guess I want to say that to all the students that if they want to come, feel free to. It's going to be art and architecture. It will be at the Miami Design Preservation League. It will be at 3 o'clock in the afternoon for 1 hour, and an open conversation about some of the motifs of Lapidus that he's left in his buildings, like bow ties and like lights and cheese holes and bean poles, and more talking to his architectural vocabulary as art in architecture.
Listen, I just want to give you thank you so much. You were incredible as a group of jurors. I know how difficult it is, but I'm going to ask you to do one more thing. Just make some final comments to the students, some general comments about your impressions of today, and any expertise you have for them, and those of you who you are still waiting to hear these final comments. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, something I really wanted to say and emphasize is that in every step of the process, when designing anything, you want to put a certain amount of care into everything, right? So I saw a lot of concept models use tape, and the usage of tape isn't a bad thing. I actually feel that you can use tape in an elegant way. And I feel like just the application of it that I saw in the concept models was a bit messy, a bit lackluster. It felt like that you didn't really put that much care into it. Just like simply cutting it and carefully applying it, it's still a lot faster than glue, but it just helps out the presentation so much in the long run. Because in the end, you're going to be formatting everything onto pages and presenting it to your college to your college advisors, and you don't want them missing the beauty and the genius of your design, focusing on like just little mishaps that you made along the way. Just an equal amount of care into the construction and also the documentation of your work is really important in for making a portfolio. Overall, I really enjoyed the research that all of you guys put into your design. There was a lot of very much research. It was well represented, but I feel like presentation wise, some people might have diverted a bit more. It's always good to go back to it, and whenever you get lost in your design, just to go back into the research and see what interested you from the beginning, as a way to guide you in your design. And yeah, that's it for me.
I agree with Daniel. I would go back into it. That's what I did with a lot of my projects, especially perfecting those final boards, because that is what you're probably going to be showing in your portfolio. And right now, you're at the stage where you have to start thinking about college and organizing all those files and making that portfolio look the best with your best work. So I think, yeah, just basically college stuff. Start thinking about it. It comes faster than you think. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think it was a really interesting project. It was really cool to see everyone kind of take their own spin on the same centralized point, which was very interesting. And I just think, yeah, as far as like presentations, no matter what type of presentation it is, whether it's a PowerPoint or on your portfolio or a simple board, like each and everything has to be very intentional. And I know like Mr. Hankins still has like a bunch of art portfolios, like reference back to alum, all that, like that's what we did. And that's how we taught ourselves how to format everything. But yeah, taking that into account, just like graphically, and the biggest thing on the page is your work. That's the number one thing, because that's the star of the show. So yeah, just something to keep in mind, but I'm excited to see where you guys go off from this.
I guess I should say thank you to everybody, but particularly thank you to Professor Hankin. And I would say what Mr. Lapidus said to you folks, what he said to Cooper Hewitt, and what he said to Columbia University students. Use your head, your heart, and your hands. Feelings find form. Throw away the computer when it doesn't serve you. It's a tool. It's nothing more than a tool. It's not the end extrusion device, right? You have to be free enough and be confident enough with where you stand. We all come at the beginning where we come from. We have to know where we are, right? And we have this beginning point, which there's a decision that we make, and we have a frame of reference. In this case, we use Lapidus as a frame of reference, and he was a very strong frame of reference, right? And once we get enclosed in that frame of reference and where we come from, and we have a definite idea, then all preponderant systems and relationships fall down from that. And instead of being chaos, you create a cosmos, and you create your particular interpretation of a cosmos, of a relationship of parts that are coming together to bear on the whole, that are your intense sequential review of ideas that led you to this order within a chaos of ideas. And that is your own, and you have to own that set of relationships that you build. But do remember that when you start, the strength of your starting point will determine the strength of the end, and that there should be some sequential seeing of change, because the background will always be there, the context will always be there, but what's going to change is what you place in it, and what you place in it has to be coming from some sequential step, from some point of reference that you absolutely own and believe in. And that's your big idea. That's your big concept. That's your raison d'etre for why that's your parti. That is why you are doing what you are doing. And I'm happy to say that y'all leaned into Lapidus and leaned into his ideas. One day you're going to lean into your own, and you want to make sure that that house of cards stands. All right, guys. So you've got a full deck. It's all in you to make it happen. You just have to own it and lean into it.
Thank you so much. Okay, yeah, I can't thank you enough for participating in this event. I'm very proud of all the students and the work that they've put in. Thank you all. You'll know next time, in order to get finished on time, you have to time yourselves, right? You have to say that, okay, I have this much time to speak, and so that you get all the feedback that you want. So I really appreciate the whole event. I feel like you know, it was a success for everybody who participated, and yeah, enjoy. Thank you so much. Okay,
Thank you.
Deborah, I'll be in touch, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
And nice
thank
meeting
you.
everybody. Daniel, Shelby, Michelle, good luck with your projects in the future.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.